A rebel to a sissy AB. Nathaniel was an average young man. However, he loved to be a rebel. In fact, he maybe loved to rebel a little too much. Far too much so for his mother's liking. Nathaniel's mother, Julie, was a single parent who was totally at the end of her tether. She needed to put an end to Nathaniel's rebellious ways once and for all. One day, when Nathaniel's mother has had enough, she decided to plot something that would finally put an end to Nathaniel's rebellious ways. She decided that she was going to turn Nathaniel back into a docile baby boy. A docile baby boy that she, oh so much missed. Nathaniel's mother had found out about this place to help out single parents with rebellious offspring. Oh my! Could this be what I have been looking for? Nathaniel's mother smiled as she typed away to fill out the necessary stuff. Nathaniel's mother then got on the phone to speak with a representative. She booked an appointment and date. "Thank you so much," said Nathaniel's mother, with such joy. She was overjoyed that she was finally going to end Nathaniel's errant ways, once and for all. "You will not regret this, Miss Valentine," the rep said as she hung up. Nathaniel's mother was so excited and glittered with glee. She was finally going to have her good little boy back, and they would be closer than ever. One day Nathaniel came home from school. Finally, he was home for the winter break. Yes! Finally, winter break, he yelled with much enjoyment. His mother greeted Nathaniel with a smile. "Aren't you a happy camper?" Nathaniel smiled. "Yeah, I will finally get some stuff done that I want to do, and maybe even hang with some friends." Nathaniel's mother smiled. "That is good, dear. I have a little surprise for you," she continued, "however it is not going to be here until tomorrow. In the meantime, I will let you wonder as to what it is going to be." This time her smile was a little more cunning. Nathaniel continued to pester his mother as to what the surprise was. He gasped. "Come on. Tell me," he pleaded, wanting to know more than anything. However, there was no way on heaven's earth that she was going to let on. Nathaniel sat in his room wondering what this surprise was going to be. "I wanna know, Nathaniel. Maybe it is a computer game." Nathaniel was now starting to throw little tantrums. This was all because his mother would not tell him what the surprise was. It was common practice for Nathaniel to throw tantrums when he did not get his own way. He was so annoyed with his mother for keeping him in suspense. However, eventually, he knew he was fighting a losing battle. He sighed, and just gave up. This was not before he had rudely called his mother a few choice names. Early, the next morning Nathaniel saw a big blue truck out in the driveway of his house. He overheard his mother talking to someone in the other room. Slowly but surely he approached the door to listen in. Nathaniel could hear the despair of his mother's voice. "He is so unruly, he never respects me, he always does whatever he wants with no consideration to others, and I am sick and tired of it." Nathaniel's mother continued. "I so miss the sweet little boy I used to have, that did as he was told. I would do everything to make sure I could be the best mother in the world." Suddenly Nathaniel heard another voice. "Well, Miss Valentine, we offer a way to get your boy back, and maybe if you chose to do so, we can turn him into a sweet little girl." Nathaniel's mother gasped and had an excited tone in her voice. "A girl. You can do that these days. I kinda would have loved a baby girl." Nathaniel gasped, he covered his mouth as he heard someone approaching. "Oh no," he whispered. Nathaniel tried to make a dash for it. However, it was too little, a little too late. Someone grabbed his shorts and dragged him into the room. "Let me go," he shouted as he desperately tried to scurry away. Nathaniel's mother laughed as she saw her son struggle. Finally, Nathaniel was getting his comeuppance. Nathaniel suddenly stopped and turned over. Recklessly he slammed his fist into the woman's leg. What a silly, selfish, spoilt boy Nathaniel is. A total embarrassment to his poor long-suffering mother. Nathaniel's mother did not bring him up to lash out. Especially not on women. Nathaniel needs to be taught a lesson once and for all. As Nathaniel's mother gasped, the woman visitor jumped up and landed on him, making Nathaniel lose his breath. "Damn it, you wretched boy. How dare you strike me," she said as she got up and then pulled a pill out of her handbag. With his mother's help, they finally got Nathaniel to take the pill. Nathaniel tried to cough the pill back up, but it did not work. Nathaniel was now doomed. Suddenly Nathaniel felt numb. He couldn't move, as his body was unresponsive. "There, that will keep that wretched boy on the ground till we need him to move," said the woman visitor. Nathaniel's mother was a little shaken but knew this had to be done. Nathaniel's behavior was out of control. So this was all for his own good. Nathaniel started to cry. All his big talk had now finally subsided. Both Nathaniel's mother and the woman visitor laughed. "See, he's just a little baby, who needs to be taken care of." They both smirked. Nathaniel's mother was a little shaken. However, she couldn't wait till he was her new baby girl. Nathaniel woke up in a bed. His world now was soft and fluffy, and his body was barely able to move. His hands and feet had mittens and booties on them. He couldn't grab anything or even get upright. His speech was muffled by a pacifier. He spat it out, but a robot arm put it back in. He did it again. But then it again put it back in, and a shock shot up his arm. Nathaniel squealed in pain. He stopped and looked around. His vision was nearsighted and unfocused. He could see himself. He was in a baby's dress, with mittens and booties. He tried to raise his arm, but his muscles were barely able to move his fingers. He just gave up and passed out again. "Sweetie? Sweetie." He woke back up who knows how much later, to see his mom there. Nathaniel gently smiled and tried to reach for her. She smiled back and held his hand. "I know this is sudden, but I missed the sweet little baby I had, and I just wanted that back." Suddenly Nathaniel had a surge of strength. He got up and pushed his mom away, trying to get out of the room. Suddenly another surge of electricity shot through his body. Nathaniel screamed in pain and fell to the ground. Nathaniel's mother wanted to cry, but had to suck it up. She didn't like to see her baby in so much pain. Nathaniel's mother started to wonder just what she has done. The moral of the story is: be careful what you wish for. A rebel to a sissy AB. Nathaniel was an average young man. However, he loved to be a rebel. In fact, he maybe loved to rebel a little too much. Far too much so for his mother's liking. Nathaniel's mother, Julie, was a single parent who was totally at the end of her tether. She needed to put an end to Nathaniel's rebellious ways once and for all. One day, when Nathaniel's mother has had enough, she decided to plot something that would finally put an end to Nathaniel's rebellious ways. She decided that she was going to turn Nathaniel back into a docile baby boy. A docile baby boy that she, oh so much missed. Nathaniel's mother had found out about this place to help out single parents with rebellious offspring. Oh my! Could this be what I have been looking for? Nathaniel's mother smiled as she typed away to fill out the necessary stuff. Nathaniel's mother then got on the phone to speak with a representative. She booked an appointment and date. "Thank you so much," said Nathaniel's mother, with such joy. She was overjoyed that she was finally going to end Nathaniel's errant ways, once and for all. "You will not regret this, Miss Valentine," the rep said as she hung up. Nathaniel's mother was so excited and glittered with glee. She was finally going to have her good little boy back, and they would be closer than ever. One day Nathaniel came home from school. Finally, he was home for the winter break. Yes! Finally, winter break, he yelled with much enjoyment. His mother greeted Nathaniel with a smile. "Aren't you a happy camper?" Nathaniel smiled. Yeah, I will finally get some stuff done that I want to do, and maybe even hang with some friends. Nathaniel's mother smiled. That is good, dear. I have a little surprise for you, she continued, however it is not going to be here until tomorrow. In the meantime, I will let you wonder as to what it is going to be. This time her smile was a little more cunning. Nathaniel continued to pester his mother as to what the surprise was. He gasped. Come on. Tell me, he pleaded, wanting to know more than anything. However, there was no way on heaven's earth that she was going to let on. Nathaniel sat in his room wondering what this surprise was going to be. Or, I wanna know, Nathaniel. Maybe it is a computer game. Nathaniel was now starting to throw little tantrums. This was all because his mother would not tell him what the surprise was. It was common practice for Nathaniel to throw tantrums when he did not get his own way. He was so annoyed with his mother for keeping him in suspense. However, eventually, he knew he was fighting a losing battle. He sighed, and just gave up. This was not before he had rudely called his mother a few choice names. Early, the next morning Nathaniel saw a big blue truck out in the driveway of his house. He overheard his mother talking to someone in the other room. Slowly but surely he approached the door to listen in. Nathaniel could hear the despair of his mother's voice. He is so unruly, he never respects me, he always does whatever he wants with no consideration to others, and I am sick and tired of it. Nathaniel's mother continued. I so miss the sweet little boy I used to have, that did as he was told. I would do everything to make sure I could be the best mother in the world. Suddenly Nathaniel heard another voice. Well, Miss Valentine, we offer a way to get your boy back, and maybe if you chose to do so, we can turn him into a sweet little girl. Nathaniel's mother gasped and had an excited tone in her voice. A girl. You can do that these days. I kinda would have loved a baby girl. Nathaniel gasped, he covered his mouth as he heard someone approaching. Oh no, he whispered. Nathaniel tried to make a dash for it. However, it was a little too late. Someone grabbed his shorts and dragged him into the room. Let me go, he shouted as he desperately tried to scurry away. Nathaniel's mother laughed as she saw her son struggle. Finally, Nathaniel was getting his comeuppance. Nathaniel suddenly stopped and turned over. Recklessly he slammed his fist into the woman's leg. What a silly, selfish, spoilt boy Nathaniel is. A total embarrassment to his poor long-suffering mother. Nathaniel's mother did not bring him up to lash out. Especially not on women. Nathaniel needs to be taught a lesson once and for all. As Nathaniel's mother gasped, the woman visitor jumped up and landed on him, making Nathaniel lose his breath. Damn it, you wretched boy. How dare you strike me, she said as she got up and then pulled a pill out of her handbag. With his mother's help, they finally got Nathaniel to take the pill. Nathaniel tried to cough the pill back up but it did not work. Nathaniel was now doomed. Suddenly Nathaniel felt numb. He couldn't move, as his body was unresponsive. There, that will keep that wretched boy on the ground till we need him to move, said the woman visitor. Nathaniel's mother was a little shaken but knew this had to be done. Nathaniel's behavior was out of control. So this was all for his own good. Nathaniel started to cry. All his big talk had now finally subsided. Both Nathaniel's mother and the woman visitor laughed. See, he's just a little baby, who needs to be taken care of. They both smirked. Nathaniel's mother was a little shaken. However, she couldn't wait till he was her new baby girl. Nathaniel woke up in a bed. His world now was soft and fluffy, and his body was barely able to move. His hands and feet had mittens and booties on them. He couldn't grab anything or even get upright. His speech was muffled by a pacifier. He spat it out, but a robot arm put it back in. He did it again. But then it again put it back in, and a shock shot up his arm. Nathaniel squealed in pain. He stopped and looked around. His vision was nearsighted and unfocused. He could see himself. He was in a baby's dress, with mittens and booties. He tried to raise his arm, but his muscles were barely able to move his fingers. He just gave up and passed out again. Sweetie? Sweetie. He woke back up who knows how much later, to see his mom there. Nathaniel gently smiled and tried to reach for her. She smiled back and held his hand. I know this is sudden, but I missed the sweet little baby I had, and I just wanted that back. Suddenly Nathaniel had a surge of strength. He got up and pushed his mom away, trying to get out of the room. Suddenly another surge of electricity shot through his body. Nathaniel screamed in pain and fell to the ground. Nathaniel's mother wanted to cry, but had to suck it up. She didn't like to see her baby in so much pain. Nathaniel's mother started to wonder just what she has done. The moral of the story is: be careful what you wish for. A heavenly mistake. It has been another rotten day. School was a nightmare as usual. I am perhaps the only boy anywhere in school that is always mistaken for a girl at first glance. It has caused me no end of torment and has caused me to be beaten repeatedly by the school's psychopathic bullies. I have returned home with another black eye and a really bloody nose. Mom and Dad are furious. Dad is mad at me for not fighting back and he hits me too. Mom doesn't like that, but defers to him because this is a man thing. He even calls me a sissy and other names all the other boys have called me. I am almost wishing I were dead. Mom has called the school and the police. There is more shame and humiliation as we again go to the principal's office and Mom files yet another complaint with the principal. This time, one of the boys are arrested for assault and battery. This only causes more shame and humiliation to be heaped on me by the rest of the students. I get called even more names. The torment gets even worse. He is now going to be waiting for me after he gets out of jail. I am not looking forward to that day. I have started skipping PE. I have no interest in the type of thing those idiots try to do to me. I have no interest in football or boxing or any of the other manly things they are insisting I do. I am not interested in getting beaten in the shower again either. I cannot help how I look. I have no interest in any of the sports the other boys do. I am interested in home ec class. It is perhaps the highlight of my day. I am the only boy in it and the girls all accept me and are really great. I do really well. I am also very good in creative writing and art class. My art teacher is really impressed with my drawings. I am finally alone in my room. I have had my shower. All my homework is done. I sit. I have taken one of my mom's baby doll nightgowns and hidden it under a drawer in my room. I take it out and put it on. It is slightly large, but it still fits well enough. I look at myself in the mirror. Even with my hair cut the way it is, if someone were to walk in on me, they would think I was a girl at first glance. Maybe even second and third. I think to myself that there has been some cosmic mistake. I feel tears welling up. I am truly miserable with my life. I contemplate suicide. I cannot take much more abuse. I start to cry. I lay across the bed and sob in my pillow. I wish I had never been born. I don't know when I fell asleep, but it did release me from another day of misery and torment. The dream. I hear a soft voice say, "Awaken." My eyes pop open. I am afraid. I never took off Mom's nightgown. I sit up quickly. I am not sure where I am. I look around and am sure this is one of those dreams I have read about in stories and am no longer concerned. I am just dreaming. I am positive. I see nothing but a door. I walk to the door and open it. I see a man. It's hard to tell. It could be a woman just as easily. There is light, but the individual is somehow sitting in a shadow and I cannot see them very well. There are two chairs facing each other. The individual seems to have a clipboard of some type across their knees. I hear a soft voice telling me to come in and sit. It is definitely male. I enter the room and sit in the chair. I look around me and the only things I see are the two of us, the chairs we are sitting in, and the door I came in. There doesn't seem to be anything else existing anywhere. I cannot say where the light is coming from. Is a strange dream. The person introduces himself. Hello Tommy, you can call me Gabe. I reply, hello. I am thinking to myself that this is a really strange dream. This is one of those dreams that seems real. I ask, what is this place? Gabe replies, this is the door to the GUP. I am the keeper of souls. I say in total confusion, where and who? Gabe smiles softly and replies, the GUP is where all new souls reside. I am the keeper of souls. Apparently there has been a mistake. I cannot believe it, but here you sit as proof. I say more to myself than to him, figures. Even in my dreams I'm a mistake. He says, Tommy, I know the problems you have. I am sorry that it has gone so badly for you. I also know that killing yourself isn't the answer. I feel a chill run through me. I am not sure of myself at this point. There is something eerie going on and I am getting confused thoughts deep in my mind. Gabe looks at the clipboard and says, the parents were right, just the wrong instance. I am not sure how that happened. I ask, what are you talking about? Gabe answers, I cannot tell you exactly what you are wanting to know. It is not allowed at this point in your existence. What I can tell you is we are in agreement with you that there has been a cosmic mistake. I brought you here to correct that mistake. I am now not interested in this dream anymore. I stand and say nothing else. I try to wake up. I can't. All that has transpired so far has only made me more depressed. I can't handle this while I'm dreaming. I look for the door to leave. I need some kind of relief and this so far hasn't done it. I walk through the door. I have entered the same place I just left. I turn and see. No. I see the same thing in both places. There is no way out except to wake up. I can't. Gabe says softly, come Tommy, sit. I promise I am going to make a correction. I am feeling fear. I hope I haven't lost my mind. I can feel the texture of the door. I feel the floor under my feet. It feels like thick shag carpet. Just I see only a flat surface. I am so depressed. I start to bang my head on the door frame. It really hurts. I almost don't care. I stop. Gabe asks me to sit again. In frustration, I flop back in the chair. I feel my forehead. There is a growing knot where I had banged my head and it hurts. I am surprised. I've never had a dream like this before. Gabe says softly, you might as well cooperate with this dream, Tommy. I will not end it until I have made the correction. Do we understand each other? In total frustrated helplessness I agree. Gabe asks, what do you feel would be the perfect girl? We don't need to ask, it's just so that we have it documented in your own voice. I laugh. I can't help it. I know now this isn't a dream. I have finally lost my mind and am in some psychotic delusion. I give up and describe to him what I feel the perfect girl is to me. Hair, eyes, figure, everything I could think of. I am crying in total misery by the time I am finished. I will commit suicide as soon as I am able. Gabe's voice is very soft and soothing. I see him writing everything I say. The words seem to glow strangely as they are put on the clipboard. He asks many questions. I find I feel better with each answer I give that is heartfelt and honest. Gabe even knows when I am being stupid and just giving him a weird answer. Those he doesn't write down. I don't feel very good when I make those answers, so I finally quit being stupid and answer the questions honestly and from my heart. He is only interested in my fantasy girl. Nothing else. He knows the true answers from the false answers. He even helps and seems to know when I am unsure. I am guided only superficially. The answers are what I truly feel in my heart. This goes on for an extremely long time. He has asked me a whole lot of questions about what my fantasy female hopes and wishes and dreams are. I don't feel so bad by the time I have answered his questions and added my heartfelt opinions. He was encouraging and very gentle the whole time he questioned me. Gabe says very softly, "We will allow you to remember. So you will know you are a very special person and are loved very much." I knew when the interview had finished even before Gabe said so. I stood to leave. Gabe said, "Before you go, I have something I need to tell you. It is a secret between you and me." I hear, but don't hear him whisper something in my ear. He goes, "Shush," and puts his index finger above my upper lip and below my nose. A light. I realize I can ponder this light. I realize I have more than that ability. I am warm. I have fingers. I explore my fingers, a thumb. I begin to suck my thumb. I move my feet gently. I am surrounded by the world I know. I hear sounds. I feel a sound as it moves from one end of me to the other. I start kicking against the softness of my world. There are hard places in my world too. My world changes, it points in different directions sometimes. I hear sounds. I feel the softness in them. I know this sound, it is the voice of my mommy as she talks to me. I don't understand the words. I know what they mean, she loves me very much. A small bright light suddenly flares. It is so bright it hurts my eyes. I kick. I kick hard. The light goes quickly away. I relax in my soft caressing world. I am getting bigger and my world is getting tight. I don't understand time. I just know here. I hear a sound over and over in Mommy's voice. Baby. I am baby above all else in the world I know. I feel something pressing from outside my world. I gently push my foot against the pressure. I hear a sound, it's a very happy sound. This happens again many times. It makes me very happy. Suddenly, my world grabs me very firmly. I hear Mommy making distressing sounds. I feel my world squeezing me very tightly. I am being forced out of my world through a very tight place. I am having problems with not getting enough air. I am being squeezed so tightly. I am being ejected from the only world I know. I see a bright light. I am being forced out into this light. I feel my world as it slips off my body and something else has me. I feel cold, haven't felt this way before. I am held upside down by my heels, a sharp smack on my bottom. I cry. I hear many coos and I am wrapped gently in a warm blanket. I hear cheers. I even know what cheers are. I am given to Mommy. She coos to me. She kisses me softly. I see her smiling face. I am loved. Mommy says, I will call her Lisa Marie. Mummy's Sissy, her pride and joy. I am very happy with the way I have brought up my son, as a little girl who wets herself. Some people will object to the way I have brought up my son. They simply don't understand how a mother feels. He is a very unusual little boy, I admit. I say little boy, but in fact he's 27 years old now. And no longer a boy at all. If you saw him, I'm sure you would agree that I've done the right thing. He's far too pretty and delicate for the wicked world of grown-ups. He wouldn't be able to cope with it at all. It's absolutely essential for me to keep him safely in his dear little nursery, dressed in the lovely FILLLY outfits I make for him. Living a dainty, girly, carefree life among his dollies. Some people will say I'm being selfish. That I make him sweet and babyish for my own pleasure. Well, I admit. I do get enormous pleasure from dressing my darling in gorgeous baby dresses and frilly bonnets. as well as watching him dribble and kick out his legs in his lovely pink satin crib. But he enjoys it too. I know he does. He cries, of course. But don't all babies cry? That just proves how babyish he really is. Besides, what could be more fun for a boy than living with his mummy? Wearing soft fluffy diapers and plastic panties and wetting himself whenever he feels like it. And I don't keep my little angel all to myself. He does meet other people too. All my girlfriends come round to see him regularly and we have lovely dressing up sessions and he has a wonderful time. Women seem to love making a fuss of him, petting and kissing him till he dribbles helplessly and soaks his diaper for them. Actually, he even has a special lady friend to take care of his needs. You see, I know a male of his age needs relief in that department. Samantha comes round once a week. A very well-developed girl. I absent myself from the nursery when she is here. So I have no idea what goes on. But little Priscilla always looks very contented afterward. That's my baby's name, by the way. Isn't it pretty? Yesterday was a fairly typical day for little Priscilla. He sleeps in a lovely white satin and lace crib beside my bed so I can see him as soon as I wake up. It's always a lovely moment for me. Looking down at my darling with his little thumb in his mouth and tears running down his cheeks and his teddy bear in his arms and his pretty pink nightie spread over the satin sheets. I can never resist gently easing my hand down the waist elastic of his panties to feel his diaper, always soaking wet, of course. It always gives me a warm maternal feeling. I know Priscilla can never leave me now. How can a man who has no control of himself possibly leave his mummy and go out into the big grown-up world? The idea is ridiculous. Well, I slipped on my negligee and bent down to kiss his baby smooth cheek. Wakey wakey Priscilla darling. He began to suck more strongly on his thumb and gave a babyish little sigh. Samantha's coming today, darling. His eyes opened suddenly and he started to wriggle and kick out his legs. I'm sure he was having naughty thoughts. Things a mother would rather not know about. But I can't blame the poor dear. Am I a little jealous of Samantha's relationship with my darling babykins? I suppose so. What mother isn't a little jealous of her son's lady friends? I had my darling all to myself that morning anyway and I wanted to make the most of it. I took a prettily wrapped cardboard box from the top of the wardrobe and undid the big pink bow. Most of Priscilla's baby dresses I make myself, but occasionally I like to buy something really special. Usually from Sissy in Knightsbridge. They sell the frilliest things you ever saw. Look, babykins, see what mummy has bought for her dear babykins. I separated the soft tissue papers and lifted out the frothy bundle of silk and chiffon. You should see the expression on baby's face when he gets a new baby dress. His little eyes light up and he starts to gurgle and dribble. His arms jerk up and down and he wriggles his bottom with pleasure. You might think with 3 wardrobes crammed full of gorgeous baby outfits, Priscilla might be a little blasé about yet another one. Not a bit of it. He gets just as excited now as he did when I first put him into one. I let him bury his face in the soft silky folds of the beautiful skirt. I let him feel the dear little pink bows around the hem and the trimming of pink lace around the Peter Pan collar and the little puff sleeves. I then hung it up over the bath so he could drawl over it while I washed his smooth skin with a pair of my panties. I was very careful over his bits, but it was no use. What with the lovely new dress, and the feel of my panties and no doubt thoughts of Samantha coming later. Well, he was just too excited, poor darling. He can't help getting joy from his baby feelings after all, can he? As always, I loved the whole process of drying him with a huge fluffy towel, patting him all over with a big fluffy powder puff and rubbing baby cream into his little nooks and crannies. Then the pinning on of his thick fleecy diaper, still warm from the airing cupboard, and the tugging up his legs of some very pretty plastic baby pants with little pink hearts all over them. By now he was already making little sighs of baby contentment and looking at me with an adoring helpless expression which made me shiver with pleasure. I liked to finish dressing him in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in his nursery. so he can see himself becoming prettier and prettier. First came one of his frothy white lacy petticoats in billowing clouds of girly softness, which always make him gasp with pleasure. He loves to feel the silk and nylon layers floating down to smother him in cascades of baby frilliness that swish excitingly round his panties. He started to wriggle and stare at himself in the mirror. I had to wipe his little chin because he was dribbling so much. Then came his baby dress and, oh my! Did I have an excited baby on my hands? He was wriggling so much. I had to hold him still to push his arms through the puff sleeves and gather the sides of the dress at the back to do up the little buttons. He was bouncing up and down frantically now. This is before I have even smoothed out the folds of the skirt over his petticoats and made the hem hang nicely around his panties. He started to shudder and gave a little cry, and I held him in my arms and kissed his hot cheeks while his little baby thrill continued. There, darling, Mummy understands, I say softly. Then my darling little girl sighed and I held him close. He will always need me. No other woman could make him so happy. This time I put a pink satin ribbon in his soft blonde curly hair and made a big bow on top. Then I slipped a pair of white woolly booties on his feet and we went downstairs for breakfast. He clambered into his high chair all by himself. I tied his wrists into the restraining cuffs so he depends on Mummy completely for feeding. I slipped an all-over plastic bib over his lovely new dress because he gets into rather a mess at the table, I'm afraid. Open wide bEGgininGs, here comes tHis. I say, making the spoon fly through the air like an airplane. Ooh. Here comes tHis. In it goes. Yummy. Ooh, clever ickle diddums. He gurgles as I stuffed more and more of the gooey mess into his toothless mouth, scraping the excess from his chin to push it inside too. One more spoonful diddums, ooh yes. Yummy yum yum. Then came a bottle of warm sweetened milk with a few drops of the liquid Madame Trevester sends me. He took the soft rubbery teat eagerly and began to suck sweetly with his head lifted upwards and cradled in my arms. He shows a strain in his face. He gives a little sigh. I knew he was pouring a stream of baby wet tHis into his diaper. Naughty darling, I said softly, smoothing my hand over his panties and feeling the gushing of warm liquid going on and on and on. I had put Priscilla in his display crib among silk cushions and pink satin ribbons, with his lovely baby dress spread out nicely and a big fluffy bunny in his arms. Sissy, play nicely. Felicity is visiting her sister's family one Sunday afternoon. Penelope's husband is playing golf and her two children, Alice, 8, and George, 9, are playing noisily on the staircase and landing. They spend more time arguing than getting along, and Penny frequently has to interject before their behavior gets out of hand. George is forever teasing his sister and Alice is always on the defensive. Why can't he just get along nicely with her? Penelope says after breaking up yet another spat. I was round at a neighbor's the other day and she has one of each. You'll never guess what she does to encourage her son to play nicely with his sister. What? Penny asked. Well, I called around and I could hear the kids playing upstairs. We sat at the kitchen table having a coffee and a chat. The kids were playing hide and seek. We could hear footsteps and doors opening and closing, and in the background the daughter loudly counted backwards from 50, Felicity described. The footsteps come down the stairs and all of a sudden, her son enters the kitchen looking for somewhere to hide. I don't think he knew I was there because he froze and looked absolutely mortified when he saw me. Why? Penny asked. Well, he was wearing a dress, and not just any dress but a really pretty party dress. Felicity explained. I figured they'd been playing dress up. He hid in the pantry and his sister yelled coming ready or not before trotting down the stairs to find him. Alice asked if he was hiding in the kitchen or dining room, but we weren't going to give him away. It didn't take long for her to find him and they trotted back upstairs, giggling and clearly having fun. So, why was he wearing a dress? Penny asked. I presume his sister was wearing one too. She was, but not a party dress like her brother. Felicity replied. Once they'd gone, I just had to ask, and his mother told me that the only time he'll play nicely with his sister is when he's dressed as a girl. I can't imagine George putting a dress on to play with Alice, Penny stated. But I imagine it'd bring him down a peg or two, she added. He's always teasing her for being a girl, calling her names and saying she's stupid. You know what boys are like. Felicity nodded in agreement. She doesn't have children of her own, but if she had, she'd prefer 2 girls or 2 boys. One of each means they'll always be at loggerheads, there'll always be arguments, and she shrugged and tailed off. I wonder if he likes it. I guess some boys do, Penny suggested. Well, he didn't look too happy when he saw me sitting in their kitchen. I got the distinct feeling that he was putting up with it rather than actually enjoying it, Felicity replied, just as another spat kicked off between her niece and nephew. What is it this time? Penny grumbled as she got up and went to deal with them. She returned a moment later, sighing heavily. He's only gone and pulled the heads off her dolls again. Felicity tutted and recalled how their brother Charles used to do the same when they were little. They just can't play nicely for more than 5 minutes, she said. They used to play with a big old doll's house, and their brother would always have to introduce some action to liven up a sedate play session. We were happy pretending the dolls were cleaning the house or unpacking the shopping, but Charlie would have the dolls tumbling down the stairs and breaking their legs or getting into fights or whatever. Penelope nodded. If there's no action, there's no fun. That's boys for you. Well, they sound like they're getting on for now, Felicity said, glancing up at the ceiling and noting the silence. Only because I've put him on a 10-minute timeout, Penny replied. Maybe I should do what your friend does and put him in a dress instead. Maybe you should, Felicity said. I wonder how she does it. I can't imagine it being that easy. Not with George, it wouldn't. But nothing ever is, Penny replied. He'd never fit into any of Alice's clothes anyway, she added. George is 9.5 and is considerably bigger than his sister, who's just turned 8. How old are your friends' kids? She asked. Peter's 11 and Emily's 8. Felicity replied. In fact, thinking about it, his dress would have drowned his sister. I wonder if, she tailed off again. If she'd bought it specially? Penny asked. Her sister nodded. I wonder if he was wearing knickers too, she mused. No idea, but he was wearing tights and girls' shoes, Felicity replied. And I guess the shoes weren't his sister's either. Penelope chuckled. She said she has no intention of even trying to put George in a dress, but was intrigued with what she'd been told. I'd love to know how she does it. I can't imagine it being a simple case of, what are their names? Emily and Peter. I can't imagine her simply saying, Peter, go and put a dress on and play with your sister. And him just doing as he's told. Penny said. No, me neither, Felicity replied. I'm intrigued too. A few days later, Felicity is having a cuppa and a chat with her friend Catherine. Her children, Peter and Emily, are at school and Felicity is telling her about her niece and nephew, George and Alice. He's a good boy for the most part, but he just won't play nicely with his sister. You know how boys can be. Don't I just? Catherine replied. Peter used to be so horrid to Emily. And then you put him in a dress. Felicity knowingly added. I was telling my sister about that. I hope you haven't been telling everyone. No, it only came up at my sister's because George wasn't playing nicely with Alice, he'd been pulling the heads off her dolls. Catherine said that she'd rather it doesn't become common knowledge, at least in the neighborhood. You know what people can be like, they'd call social services and report me if they knew, not that there's anything wrong with petticoating. Is that what you call it? Felicity asked. Catherine nodded. I can't imagine it's very easy, getting a boy to wear a dress, especially a pretty party dress. It's easier than you'd think, Catherine replied. Peter's more worried about people knowing he has dresses than wearing them. He did look mortified when they were playing hide and seek. Felicity recalled. So, he has more than one then, she asked. Oh yes. And you tell him to wear one and he does, she asked. Catherine nodded. Just like that? Felicity quizzed. No fights, no tears. Like I say, he's more worried about people knowing that he wears dresses than he is about actually wearing them. Catherine replied. He did kick up a stink to begin with, but these days he tends to do as he's told. I'd have loved it if my mother put my brother in a dress when he was naughty. Felicity imagined. He used to be such a brat. Whenever Penny and I were playing nicely with our dolls, he'd burst in with his action men and World War III would break out. It used to be the same with Peter, until one of his teachers gave me a pamphlet about petticoating. I've still got it somewhere, she said, pushing her chair back and rummaging through one of the kitchen drawers. Here. She handed the pamphlet to Felicity. Proactive Parenting, Petticoating for Boys, she read. That's a sweet outfit, she said, tapping her manicured nail on one of the 3 images on the front. Very Fauntleroy, she smiled before opening its pages. Does he wear girls' underwear too? Felicity asked as she noticed the section regarding underwear. Catherine nodded. Not all the time, she quizzed as she read the advice. Unless he's got PE. Catherine replied, or going swimming with his friends or something. So, how long have you been doing this for? A couple of years. Really? Catherine nodded. He must be used to then. Again, Catherine nodded. And no one knows. Well, none of his friends or classmates so far as I can tell. Catherine replied. His cousins and grandparents know, and you of course, but other than that, it's a closely guarded secret. Felicity grinned and said if my mother had done this to Charlie I'd have told everyone. Well, so would Emily, but she's been sworn to secrecy. Catherine replied. I told her that petticoating a boy is like putting him under a spell, and if the secret gets out, the spell is broken. A week or so later, Felicity is chatting with her sister on the telephone. The conversation is interrupted a couple of times when Penelope has to tell her son to stop doing something, to be quiet and to stop teasing his sister. Hey, I was talking to my friend last week, the one who puts her son in dresses. Felicity says. She calls it petticoating and she gave me a pamphlet to give you. I'm not sure if that's what he needs. Penny replied, before interrupting the conversation again to threaten her son with a good hiding. Discipline is what he needs. Petticoating is discipline, and according to Kath, it's far more effective than smacking. Felicity told her. She said she was having the same problems as you before she began putting Peter in dresses, she claimed. These days she says he's ever so well behaved, and from what little I've seen, it does appear to be very effective. Felicity went on to describe a scene from her last visit to Catherine's house. They were drinking coffee and chatting in the kitchen when Peter and Emily arrived home. Peter's in his first year at high school and Emily's still at junior school. He collects his little sister after school every day and walks her home. Emily was wearing her gingham school dress and Peter was wearing his school trousers, shirt and tie. Catherine asked them if they had any homework, and of course, they had. Felicity explained. She told Emily to get on with it and sent Peter to get changed. We vacated the dining table and moved to the sitting room, and Peter came downstairs wearing a girl's school uniform. Penelope was flabbergasted. A gingham dress like his sister's, she imagined. No, a little pleated school skirt with white knee socks and black ballet shoes, just like the high school girls wear. Felicity described. He was very bashful because I was there, but apparently, he does it every day after school until his homework's complete, then he can wear his boy clothes. I can't imagine George doing that. Penelope replied. It's hard enough getting him to do his homework, let alone getting him to dress as a girl first. Catherine said that it's a lot easier than one would expect. She says that Peter's more worried about his friends finding out about his dresses than he is about actually wearing them, which I guess is what makes him so willing. Felicity explained. And he does wear girls' undies, she added. Well, I don't know about you, but it seems a little cruel. Penny replied. So does giving them a good hiding. Felicity retorted. If physical punishment worked, you wouldn't have to threaten him with it so often. I know, it's very rare that I actually smack him. Plus, he's getting a little old for that now. He'll be 10 in November. Their phone conversation soon ended and Felicity said she'd get the pamphlet over to her sister soon. Although Penelope did state that she wasn't at all keen on the idea. A few days later, Felicity called in on her sister and gave her the pamphlet. I love this outfit, Felicity said, pointing out the boy on the cover wearing a pretty cotton pinafore over a very smart short suit with girly knee socks and girls' shoes. And it claims that petticoated boys are far more willing to help around that house. He could certainly help more with the chores. Penny sighed. But you know how stubborn he can be. If he doesn't want to do something, he won't. Why don't you give it a try? Felicity suggested. Let's see how stubborn he is when he's wearing a dress. You'll find that out when you try to get him to wear one, it'd never happen. Penny claimed. Plus I'd have to buy him one first. None of Alice's would fit him. True, it's the same for Kath. Emily's dresses don't fit Peter, but she's been petticoating him for a couple of years now and Emily gets her brother's hand-me-downs. Felicity stated. Penny emitted a nervous chuckle. Imagine getting hand-me-down dresses from your big brother. I know. And when Emily starts high school, she'll be wearing her brother's hand-me-down uniform. Felicity grinned. Penelope perused the pamphlet and found it intriguing, but wasn't convinced that petticoating would work. For a start, getting George to wear girls' clothes would be nigh on impossible, and Felicity pointed out that Brian, her husband, probably wouldn't allow it anyway. I guess it's easier for Catherine because she's a single parent. Felicity supposed. Her house. Her rules. Yes, maybe. Penny replied. Although I doubt Brian would even notice. He's always working late or playing golf or going to seminars. He hardly sees anything of the kids these days. She sighed and said that half the time she feels like a single parent. How did your friend get her son to wear his first one? She quizzed. I imagine that wasn't easy. I'm not entirely sure, but she did say that Peter's more worried about his friends knowing than he is about wearing them. Felicity said. Maybe she just bought him one and said if you don't wear it, I'll show it to your friends, and if you do, it'll be a secret, she suggested. After all, it'd be far too big to be his little sister's and far too small to be one of his mother's. Maybe she'd embroidered his name on it, Penny suggested. She recalled an old comedy show on TV in which one of the male characters had a dress in his wardrobe. He denied it was his, but it had his name embroidered on the collar. Was it the young ones? She quizzed. Yes. It was Rick's dress and Neil was wearing it. Felicity chuckled. It does recommend in the pamphlet that their name be put on their knickers. It also suggests making them wear a training bra too. What's the point of that? Penelope asked. Who knows? Felicity shrugged. I'm not sure I agree with all the advice, but seeing how George treats Alice and how Peter treats his sister, I certainly think there's something in it, she said. Remember how Charlie was when we were young? She asked, recalling how he always used to twine their bra straps against the back of their shoulders. I doubt he'd have done that if he had to wear a training bra too. Maybe. Penny replied. I guess Alice has all that to look forward to from George. Not necessarily. Felicity replied, tapping her fingers on the pamphlet. Kath said that you can get a more in-depth booklet through one of these websites, and that Peter has one called Pettiquette, an etiquette guide for petticoated boys which explains all the whys and wherefores in easy-to-understand terms. Penelope sneered. I'm still not convinced, although it would be nice if he could get on with Alice a little better, and help around the house more. And do his homework when asked, and tidy his room, her sister added. Yes. Penny sighed. Something needs to be done, but I'm not sure it's this, she said, flicking through the pamphlet once more. The weeks pass by and nothing more is said on the matter between Felicity and her sister. She sees her friend Catherine once or twice a week in each other's houses. Sometimes Catherine will have Peter and/or Emily with her, and Peter is always wearing normal boys' clothes. But Felicity can't help but wonder if he's wearing knickers beneath them, and if so, are they pink and frilly, and do they have his name on? When Felicity visits Catherine, sometimes Peter is dressed as a girl and sometimes he's wearing boys' clothes. Felicity never draws attention to his frocks, some of which are lovely, if a little young for an 11-year-old, whilst others are very plain and very drab. After briefly grabbing a snack from the kitchen, whilst wearing a green plaid pinafore over a white blouse and white tights, Felicity asks if he has a set routine. "Or do you just put him in one when he's naughty?" she asked. "He does his homework wearing his girl's uniform after school for an hour or two, and I like to see him wearing a nice Sunday dress," Catherine replied. "But the rest of the time he's usually wearing boy clothes, over his knickers and training bra, of course," she added. "It's when I sense him getting bored or stroppy that I'll suggest he plays with his sister for a while." "And that means go and put a dress on?" Felicity quizzed. "Yes," Kath replied. "Does he choose one or do you choose for him?" "It depends. Sometimes I'll let him wear one that he likes, sometimes I'll put him in one that I know he hates." "So he does like some of them?" Catherine smiled and chuckled. "Oh yes. That surprises me. Well, give a boy 5 dresses, a yellow one, a pink one, a lilac one, a flowery one and a blue one, and you can bet your bottom dollar that he'll wear the blue one when given the choice." "Yes, I suppose," I replied, trying to imagine how a boy might think when faced with a selection of girls' dresses. "It's more the best of a bad bunch than him actually liking them," Catherine added. "Yes, I can imagine," Felicity said, chuckling. "I gave my sister that pamphlet, but I don't think she was too taken with the idea of putting George in dresses." "I was in 2 minds to begin with," Catherine replied. "It was only when I saw just how much it helped him to behave did I realize that I'd done the right thing," she explained. "But each to their own, if she's not taken by it then, ultimately, it's her decision." "True," Felicity replied. The following Sunday, Penny visits her sister with both George and Alice. It's a sweltering day and they sit in her back garden sipping lemonade. George asks if the pond has gone toxic because its surface is covered in a layer of green gunk. "It's algae," Felicity tells her nephew. "It looks putrid, like nuclear waste or something." George says. "It's quite harmless," Felicity tells him. "It happens every summer when it's hot." She shows her sister and niece some of the new flowering plants she's put in. There's petunias and begonias, geranium and one called Black-Eyed Susan. George sits by the pond, poking at the algae with a stick and turning his nose up at the gunky green gunge. Being a boy, he has no interest in flowers. Alice saunters over after he calls her name. She emits a high-pitched yelp and George laughs out loud before causing a huge splash. The adults rush over and grab his arms, pulling him out of the pond. "What happened?" Felicity asked. Alice is on the verge of tears. "He splashed some of that gunge on me," she said. "It's all over her t-shirt and is dripping onto her shorts." "George, why would you do such a thing?" his mother barked. "It was funny," he claimed. The adults presumed that Alice must have pushed him, but the rotten little scoundrel had laughed so hard at his sister that he fell backwards into the pond. He's covered in gunk and both need a change of clothes. Felicity rushes indoors and returns with a couple of bath towels. She tells them that they're not going into the house until they've removed their gunky sodden clothing. Penelope berates her son for being so cruel and stupid. "What are you going to wear now?" she asks in total exasperation as he peels off his jeans. "Leave it with me," Felicity tells her sister. "You get them stripped and dried, I'll back in a moment," she says before darting off. "Oh, Catherine. Sorry to call round unannounced, you'll never guess what's happened." "Is everything okay?" Catherine asked. Felicity describes what her troublesome nephew has just done. And neither of them have a change of clothes, so I was hoping I could borrow something for a couple of hours. Alice and Emily are about the same size, I guess, if that's okay. Of course. Catherine replied. And what about the boy? She asked. How old is he? 9, going on 5. Felicity said, clearly very annoyed with him. Well, I could find him some tracksuit pants that might fit, an AT-shirt. Catherine suggested. I think it's high time he was taught a lesson that he won't forget in a hurry. I know it's a bit of an ask, but could I borrow one of Peter's dresses? Absolutely. Catherine replied as a wry smile swept her face. Follow me, she said as she beckoned her friend upstairs. What size is he? She asked. Normalish for a 9-year-old. Felicity replied as she was led up to the landing. No kids today. They're at their granny's. Catherine replied as she opened a wardrobe and began rummaging. Are these all Peter's? Felicity asked as she took in the resplendent display of dresses. They're all his old ones, a bit too small for him now and waiting for Emily to grow into them, she said. How about this one? She asked as she removed a particularly garish frock. Maybe something a little more sedate. Felicity suggested. I don't want him to think that I borrowed something really girly on purpose. I'll tell him it's the best I could get. Okay, what about this? Catherine suggested. That's better. Felicity said. You sure you don't mind? Not at all, she smiled. He'll want knickers too, and socks. If that's okay. Felicity didn't hang around. Within 5 minutes of her leaving her sister to deal with the kids, she was back. I've borrowed some dry clothes from a neighbor. I hope they fit, she said, handing Alice a t-shirt and a denim dunja dress. Come with me, George. Felicity instructed. You'd better come too, she said to her sister. Wearing nothing but a towel and his socks, George followed his mother and aunt upstairs. First, she apologized to her nephew. Then she told a tiny white lie and explained that she'd borrowed some clothes of a friend who has an 8-year-old daughter. And this is the only thing she had that might fit you. I'm not wearing that. George blurted when faced with a dress. I'll stick to a towel, he suggested. Oh no you won't, his mother said. She grabbed his towel and whipped it from his waist. George would have grabbed it back, but he was too busy trying to hide his bits. Auntie Fliss has gone to the trouble to get you something dry to wear and you're going to wear it whether you like it or not. Felicity unbuttoned the dress and handed it to Penelope. Penelope held it for George, who reluctantly stepped into it. He pushed his arms through the sleeves. His mother turned him around and began to button him in. His face was an absolute picture. His cheeks blushed to a deep crimson as his mother turned him to face her so she could see how it looked. That's not so bad, she said. At least it's blue and not pink. It's horrible. George mumbled. The mid-blue dress has a white Peter Pan collar and short pin-tucked sleeves. It has a high waist and a full skirt with a ruffled hem that lands a few inches above his knees. His aunt tells him that it was the best she could find that wasn't too girly. You'll need these too, she said, revealing a pair of pink knickers with oodles of frilly lace trim. I can't wear those, he peeped. Oh yes you can, young man, his mother stated. She snatched them from her sister's fingers and held them open for her son to step into. He uttered a few whimpers as he put his trembling feet into the leg holes before his mother pulled them all the way up. There, no one can see them so you've nothing to worry about, she said. Are those for him too? She asked, noticing a pair of socks in her sister's hand. Yes. I wasn't sure if his had got wet or not. They haven't, George said. Well, they can go in the wash anyway, his mother said. Reluctantly, George removed his dry socks and pulled on the socks his aunt had borrowed. He moaned that they were girls' socks. Well, you've only got yourself to blame, his mother said. Come on. George's sister giggled when her brother returned wearing a blue dress and a pair of white pelerine knee socks. To add insult to injury, his sister's borrowed clothes aren't anywhere near as girly as his. Why couldn't I wear that, he moaned. I won't fit you, George, his aunt replied. Now, have you apologized to Alice for what you did? I got drenched too, he protested. More than she did. Only because you were laughing at her, his aunt reminded him. Sorry, he muttered. Apologize properly, George, like you mean it, his mother insisted. Otherwise I'll ask you to show your sister the lovely pair of knickers you're wearing. Emily giggled. Is he? She asked. Yes. Felicity replied. And just in case you're wondering, they're pink and very frilly, she said as her nephew blushed even more. George, come with me. Why? He whined. Because you're going to put the clothes in the wash, she told him. You need to take responsibility for your actions, and the sooner they get washed, the sooner they can be hung out to dry. Can't you put them in the dryer? He moaned. They'll take ages on the line, he whined. You should have thought of that before you threw the algae at your sister and fell into the pond. Felicity watched over her nephew as he scraped the gunky algae off the clothes, rinsed them in the sink, then threw them into the washing machine. She told him which washing cycle to put them on, and he asked how long it would take. A couple of hours, she replied. Then they'll need a couple of hours on the line to dry, she added. That's ages, he whined. That means I'll have to wear this all afternoon, he sulked. It does, his aunt says. And hopefully you'll learn a lesson from the experience. With their clothes in the wash, Felicity pushes her nephew out into the back garden where his mother and sister are Saturday. I don't want to go outside, he whined. Well, I don't want to stay inside, we want you where we can keep an eye on you. The sheepish boy made his way across the grass and parked his sorry ass on one of the patio chairs. His sister told him that he needs to scoop his dress when he sits to avoid it getting all creased, and he did so. He sat quietly with his knees together. His aunt poured him a glass of lemonade and handed it to him. Thank you, he muttered. Well, that certainly put a dampener on what should have been a nice day, his mother said. Well, what's done is done. Felicity replied. They've both got clean and dry clothes, and their dirty clothes are in the wash, she added. And since you're all stuck here until their clothes have been washed, dried, and ironed, I'd better think about something to eat. Who fancies a barbecue? Me. Alice said. If it's not too much trouble. Penny added. None at all. Felicity replied. All she needs is a couple of disposable barbecues, a selection of meat, some buns, some salad and relish, and they're all set. Who wants to come to the shop with me? She asked. George? Do I have to? He meekly asked. I'll come. Alice said. George stayed in the garden with his mother whilst Felicity and her niece drove to the nearest convenience store. Who's the girl you borrowed our clothes off? Alice asked. Her name's Emily. Felicity replied. She's about your age. I think you'd like her. Is George really wearing frilly pink knickers too? She asked. He is, her aunt replied. And hopefully now he's dressed like a girl, he'll learn to be a little bit nicer to you. I hope so too. He's always really mean to me. Well, not anymore, I hope. Meanwhile, George is feeling very sorry for himself as his mother gives him a pep talk. Think yourself lucky that you're not wearing a frilly pink dress to match your frilly pink knickers, she tells him. He tells her that they're not his knickers. Well, I doubt the little girl who lent them to you will want them back after you've worn them, she spat. In fact, when your own clothes are dry, I've a good mind to send you round to Auntie Fliss's friend so you can give them back personally and say thank you. Please don't, Mum, he pleaded. I'm really sorry I flicked the algae at Alice, it was only a joke. That's the problem with you, it's always only a joke when you're mean to her. Why can't you just play nicely for a change? I will. I promise, he said. Well, I hope so. I'm just about at the end of my tether with you and your antics, she said. The boy hung his head in shame. His mother knew that he felt it, which makes a refreshing change. Maybe there is something to this petticoat discipline thing after all, she wondered. George sat stewing in his frock for around half an hour before his sister and aunt returned and broke the ice. Felicity set the barbecues going and suggested that Alice prepares the table. We need plates, napkins, knives and forks, mayonnaise, relish, ketchup, brown sauce. Why don't you help, George? I don't know what to do, he meekly peeped. Well, I'm sure Alice knows how to lay a table, so why don't you follow her lead, his aunt suggested. George reluctantly did as he was told. He ferried cutlery and crockery from the kitchen to the patio. He laid the plates out with a knife and fork placed neatly on a folded napkin, just as his sister requested. He fetched a tray full of condiments and asked what to do next. His aunt said she needed to make a salad, and suggested he pick some flowers with Alice. Flowers? He quizzed. Yes, George. Flowers. They'll make a lovely centerpiece for the table you've so kindly laid, his aunt told him. Penelope helped prepare the salad. Both of them peered out of the kitchen window. Alice selected and cut the blooms, handing them one by one to her brother. He didn't look like he was enjoying himself one little bit, but at least he wasn't being horrible to his sister for a change. I presume you could have got him some boy's clothes if you wanted to? Penny asked her sister. I could. But so far as George is concerned, I don't know anyone with a son his age to borrow from. Felicity replied. She chuckled and added. And he is wearing boys' clothes. I know. Penny replied. I guess the moment you revealed those knickers, they are far too frilly for a girl, well, a girl over the age of 3. Felicity grinned as they watched George meekly following his sister around the garden in his prissy knee socks and pretty blue frock. Putting him a dress has certainly taken the alpha out of the male, she said. Although according to Kath, all they need is knickers to curb their boisterousness, she added. Well, either way, it's clearly had an effect on him. Penny replied. Whether it's going to be a lasting effect I don't really know. Unless you try. Felicity said. I'll check the coals, they should be hot enough by now, she added, leaving her sister to slice the onions, tear the lettuce, chop the tomatoes, grate a carrot and pour on the dressing. Penelope covered the salad bowl with cling film and delivered it to the table. Felicity was sacrificing the sausages first. A tray of burgers sat in the sun, waiting for their turn over the hot coals. Can you take over for a minute? She asked, handing the tongs to Penelope. Felicity popped indoors and returned a moment later. George, she announced. I've fetched a vase for your flowers. Thank you, Auntie, he meekly replied. Oh, this is such a refreshing change. Penelope said as she turned the sausages. Al fresco dining? Felicity asked as she took the tongs from her sister. Well, that too. I was referring to George. Penelope said. He normally responds with a grunt. Having picked plenty of flowers, Alice arranges them nicely in the vase. She sends George to fetch a jug of water and without question, he does. How's he been, Alice? Her mother asked. Is he being nice or? He's trying to be, but he's being very quiet more than anything. Alice replied. I think he's embarrassed because his dress is prettier than mine. I think you might be right, her mother stated. How are those sausages coming along? She asked her sister. Almost ready. Felicity replied as George returned. He handed the jug to his mother. She thanked him and he forced a smile. Hungry? She asked as Felicity put the charred sausages onto a plate. George nodded and said yes. Now you'll have to be careful when you're eating. You don't want to spill any relish or ketchup on your dress. It's not my dress, he replied in a meek, whiny tone. Exactly, his mother said. You wouldn't want to lend something to someone and get it back all dirty and messy, would you? She asked. George shook his head. His mother cut the sausages lengthways and placed them on the buns. George applied his relish and ketchup very sparingly before sitting himself down. Good boy, his mother smiled, before handing Alice a sausage bun. Fliss, Do you relish or ketchup of both? Felicity was busy flipping burgers. Penny delivered her a sausage bun and took over whilst she ate. She couldn't help but glance at her son and his nice blue dress. Its white collar flaps in the wind. The skirt on his lap wafts in the breeze. His pale skinny knees are locked together in a most ladylike way. His white pelerine knee socks look like they belong, and it's only his own black and white sneakers that look out of place. She imagines a pair of dainty ballet pumps, then a pair of shiny black Mary Janes. She visualized his knickers, all pink and frilly, before recalling the look on his face when he realized that he had to wear them. Her usually defiant son was defeated in that instant using nothing more than a pair of knickers. After chomping their way through most of the sausages, burgers, and salad, Felicity and Penelope began to clear the table. Alice offered to help. George followed suit, but their offers were declined. You can check on the washing machine though, George. Felicity reminded him. He trotted to the kitchen and quickly returned. It's still going through its cycles. His aunt and mother took the plates indoors, leaving George and Alice alone. He sat himself down and sighed. It's gonna be ages before the laundry's done. Well, at least we've got something to wear in the meantime. Alice replied. I quite like this dress, she said, looking down at her casual denim dungaree dress worn over a plain white t-shirt. It's better than mine, her brother whined. Are you really wearing knickers? Alice asked. Her brother hung his head and nodded. He's clearly thoroughly ashamed of that fact. Sorry I splashed you, he muttered. Are you? Alice quizzed. Or are you sorry that you ended up having to wear a dress? George gulped and frowned. Both, he sheepishly replied. Alice knew she had the upper hand and played on it. She told him that he's hardly ever nice to her and is always mean. She reminded him of the times he pulled the heads off her dolls, or spoiled a nice game with his boisterous behavior, or demolished the Lego princess castle she'd spent ages building. Sorry, he muttered. Penny and Felicity returned and sat themselves down. Shall I get the swing ball out? She suggested. Alice was keen whilst George was non-committal, but like it or not, he played. The adults sat on the patio and chatted about this and that whilst keeping an eye on Alice and George. Do you think they get used to it? Penny asked. What? Felicity replied. Wearing dresses. Her sister nodded. I don't know really. Peter seems to accept it. His mother says he's even got some favorites, but I think they're just the best of a bad bunch really. Stands to reason. Penny said. I wonder where she buys his knickers from, she pondered. I've never seen anything like them in the girls' department. They are very frilly, aren't they, and definitely cut for a boy. Felicity replied. I think they come from a specialist shop. I'll ask. They sat and chatted whilst the kids played swing ball. George's skirt swished this way and that as he lunged for the ball. Who's winning? Their mother asked. We're not really keeping score. Alice replied. But I think George is. I think it's about even. George replied. Well, that's another nice change, he's normally so competitive. Penelope commented. The sound of the washing machine got louder than the wind in the trees. It's on its final noisy spin cycle. Felicity focused on it and within minutes, it whirred to a halt. Right, George, shall we hang this washing out? She suggested. Can I play for a bit? His mother asked. George gave her his bat and followed his aunt indoors. She gave him a laundry basket and under her watchful eye and constant instruction, he emptied the damp garments and folded them as best he could. How long will they take to dry? He asked. Not long. Felicity replied. An hour or two, I guess, she added. That's ages, he sighed. Far too long to spend wearing just a towel, his aunt said. It's not so bad wearing a dress, is it? I'd rather wear boys' clothes, he humbly replied. They returned to the garden where Alice played swing ball with her mother. Felicity handed George the pegs and he hung their t-shirts, his pants, his jeans and socks and his sister's shorts to dry on the washing line. Penny gave her son the backpack before joining her sister on the patio. She sighed a happy sigh. "It's turned out to be quite a pleasant afternoon, hasn't it?" she said. "I'm almost glad he splashed Alice and landed himself in a frock." Felicity chuckled. "I do feel a little bit mean. I could have borrowed some pants instead. And he'd never have learnt his lesson." Penelope added. "I think you did the right thing under the circumstances." Sissy Playhouse. I was 3 years out of school and working as a stringer for several local publications. My degree in journalism hadn't propelled me into the life of luxury I hoped, but after some struggle, I had lined up a regular series of papers and magazines that would print my work. The pay was lousy, the hours sucked, but I did have the freedom to pursue material that interested me. As a closet fetishist, I had taken a recent liking to pen stories about local clubs that were off the beaten path. Sure, I pursued the soccer fans at the only Irish pub in town and looked into the Red Hat ladies who met twice a month to drink tea on the southeast end of town, but I was also looking into the secret fetish clubs. Until now, they were all a bit too far out for mainstream papers. I was stunned by the number of people in my metropolitan area who were into swinging and pony play. But I knew I hit pay dirt when I stumbled on Samantha's Sissy Playhouse. From the website, I gathered that her home, which doubled as the clubhouse, was actually a place for local crossdressers, ranging from sissy to TV to full transgender, to come and be themselves. We emailed back and forth and she was thrilled at the idea of having her business profiled. The address was a secret, only available to those who requested it from her website, but she happily emailed me the location on my promise of keeping the Playhouse's neighborhood and address a secret. For as long as I could remember, I had sissy tendencies. I started as a diaper lover and teen baby, but by the time high school concluded, my attraction grew to include women's clothing. By the time I finished college, I had experimented with everything thanks to the internet, although my actual dressing and real-life experiments were quite minimal. Part of me longed to join Samantha's club, but I knew my high-profile job made any public display of sissiness impossible. Still, a girl can dream. At the appointed date and time, I drove up the lengthy, private driveway to a stunningly large mansion in the hills outside town. I parked in the driveway and walked the steps, positive I had the wrong place, until I saw a pink sign on the porch that read Samantha's Playhouse. I rang the doorbell and before long, a gorgeous young woman answered. This stunningly beautiful brunette introduced herself as Samantha and ushered me excitedly into the home. Dressed in a simple pink summer dress with her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her natural beauty radiated from her petite, 5'2" frame. We exchanged pleasantries before she asked me to sit in one of the chairs in the sunroom, a porch-like area in the back of the house. She offered me a glass of water before sitting. I set out my tape recorder and we began to chat. As our conversation ran on, Samantha told me that the Playhouse came about as she was studying for a psychology degree. During a class on human sexuality, she realized that cross-dressing, in its simplest form, is not necessarily a sign of homosexuality or the desire to be completely a woman. It is merely a stress relief for men. Like any hobby, there were myriad variations, including some men who truly wanted to be women, some who wanted to be treated as women, some who were aroused by the clothes, and on and on. She also realized that most men who dressed did so in secret because there was nowhere acceptable for them to express this desire. To serve that need, she had created the Playhouse. A safe, discreet, completely anonymous place where men could behave as they wished, take their dressing to whatever reel they liked. My throat was dry as I listened, dying to grab her hand and shout yes. You understand. But I did not. After about a half hour, she asked if I would like to take a tour. I eagerly agreed, and that's when she asked if I would like to try on one of her outfits. In order to fully experience the club. Joking that it was for journalistic purposes only, I heartily agreed. With that, Samantha led me to a room off the main entryway. Inside were 3 private dressing rooms and the largest closet you can imagine, full of all things girly. Costumes, dresses, lingerie, you name it and she had it. in all different sizes as well. Samantha rummaged in the racks for a minute before handing me a simple pink sweater and denim skirt, pointing me into one of the changing rooms. We giggled back and forth together through the curtain as I changed. The skirt sliding up my legs and the tight sweater hugging my chest felt like heaven. When I exited, Samantha applauded, telling me how cute I looked. She took me to the room next door, which was a full makeup facility complete with dozens of wigs. She quickly fastened a simple, bob-cut brunette wig to my head and applied a light touch of blush and lipstick. The smells were heaven and I could barely keep up the friendly banter we were having. Samantha then led me upstairs. She explained that the downstairs was kept as a normal home but the upstairs gave the girls who visited free reign. Each room we walked into was pure heaven. A full dance studio with ballet bars and Pilates equipment. Bedrooms made up for a baby, toddler, and adult woman. She explained that the girls liked to explore different fantasies and each playroom was designed to fulfill as much as possible. She had stay-at-home moms who lived nearby come over while their offspring were in school to play with the club members. That offered everything from diaper changes for the abs to girl talk partners for the full-grown girls. When we finally got back downstairs, my head was spinning and I could barely walk straight. Samantha asked if I wanted to share another drink with her or if I had to run right away. Not wanting to leave, I agreed and sat as she poured us each a diet soda. So, Samantha suddenly asked, "Will you be signing up for a membership?" I nearly choked on my drink and tried to play it off as if she were kidding. She was not. "Sweetie, I can see it all over your face. You may be a reporter, but I can tell you're a sissy too. From the way you've let your hands dangle femininely against your skirt to the way you just smoothed your skirt when you sat down." I blushed uncontrollably, realizing I had been having so much fun I had given myself away. After a moment of prodding, she took my hand and gently told me it was okay. That this was a safe place. I broke down, crying a bit, and confessed that she was right. I told her everything, that I was one of those straight men who loved to occasionally be a sissy. While I thanked her for the kind offer, there was no way I could afford the very steep membership rates. Samantha kept the rates high to make sure only serious members joined. At that point, Samantha hugged me, took my hand, and led me back to the front entryway. She pointed to a small desk outside her office. She told me that her dream was to make that desk a display case. A place where a sissy she created could work as her assistant, greeting guests and serving as a testimonial to the wonderful impact of her club. She would love to let me fill that seat. That is, if I wanted to. The arrangement would be simple. I would take a 1-week vacation from writing and come work for her. She would give me lessons on how to be a proper lady and train me on the job as her assistant. If at the end of 1 week we were both enjoying the arrangement, she would make me a job offer. It took less than a second for me to agree and I was told to report first thing the next morning. The following 7 days were pure heaven. Each morning I would arrive at 7 and be welcomed with a hug from Samantha. I would then enter one of the dressing rooms and put on the outfit she selected. Tan tights every day to begin to disguise my leg hair. Then panties and a simple outfit, typically a knee-length skirt and a long-sleeve top. She would then apply a different wig each day, letting me try looks from a tight bun to pigtails to a layered, Jennifer Aniston look. Finally, my makeup. Foundation, blush, and eyeshadow. Macassar and lip gloss to complete the look. From there we would go about our day. Each guest had to give at least a half-hour warning, which provided us time to lay out their outfit in the dressing room and prepare any activities she wished to participate in. This week, each girl had the option of including me in her visit, to which every sissy happily agreed, thrilled to have a playmate. Some days, we would simply sit and talk in the living room. Other days were a bit more adventurous. Stacy asked me to join her dance class, taught by a friend of Samantha's in the dance studio. We both dressed in traditional ballerina outfits and worked through graceful, elegant princessish moves together. Kathy enjoyed being a little girl and loved the idea of having a playdate. Samantha dressed us both in diapers and short baby doll dresses, feeding us from bottles and changing us when we wet. The week flew by and before I knew it, it was the last day of our experiment. I hoped against hope that this would work out but silently fretted that the salary wouldn't be enough to cover my rent or that perhaps Samantha was displeased. We had booked that last Sunday afternoon out to be together, so we could enjoy some time alone and discuss the future. As a special treat, Samantha offered to let me pick my outfit for the day. When I emerged from the dressing room in that short pink baby doll she dressed me in to play with Kathy, she giggled. She said that outfit wasn't complete without a proper diaper. She led me by the hand up to the nursery room where she laid me down, eased my dress up, and began applying powder. She asked if I had fun this week and I nodded. She slid the diaper under my bottom and taped it tightly before saying that she too had quite a fun time and would love to continue having me as her assistant. But she stopped. "I don't want you to be my employee." My heart sank as I realized she would likely ask me to work part-time, for free, as she couldn't afford to pay me full-time. Quite the contrary. She explained that her parents were quite wealthy and had given her a large sum of money to pursue her research. Her father was actually a sissy as well, and they felt her efforts were a great cause. She then explained that she had grown to love me over the past week and hoped I would move in and be her sissy forever. My jaw dropped and all I could do was cry from happiness. Samantha hugged me tightly as I said "I love you too" over and over into her shoulder. 6 months later. Samantha and I didn't waste time. I gave notice to my publications, ended my lease, and moved my stuff in almost immediately. My family was thrilled that I had found someone so well off so I could focus on writing my novel, and her family loved having another sissy around. I accumulated my own private collection of clothes. But I also kept my boy clothes. At my choosing, I could go out in public as a guy, meet my friends, even have them over, provided they stayed downstairs, of course. But when it was just Samantha and me, my male name Alex turned into Ashley and I would run around the house. We got married 4 months after our first meeting but held a second ceremony for the club members with 2 brides and no groom. Becoming Alice. My sister's been walking on clouds all year. She's going to Glastonbury with a bunch of friends and I'm really quite jealous. I'm almost 17 and my sister has just turned 18. And in spite of the fact that 16 and 17-year-olds are allowed to attend the festival unaccompanied, I wasn't even allowed to register because Mum thinks I'm a bit too young, so I'm sulking in the background as spring draws to a close whilst my sister and her pals are getting over-excited about tents, wellies, and festival outfits. 6 of them are going: Claire, my sister, Rebecca, her best friend, Sally and Hannah, college friends, Shannon, Hannah's sister, and Alice, our cousin. Alice isn't much older than me, so it's doubly annoying she was given permission to go and I wasn't. Mum tells me that I can apply for a ticket next year, but next year is going to be a fallow year, which means there will be no Glastonbury festival for 2 years. I resign myself to the fact that it's not going to happen. My sister's going with a group of girls, so I'd be completely out of place anyway. Saying that, my envy increases when they're sat round the kitchen table with a big Glastonbury map and programme, planning where they'll camp and which acts they'll go and see. Like me, they're alternative types, so will be avoiding the top pop acts and hitting the smaller stages and DJ tents. They watch sets from previous years on the iPlayer, but spend as much time watching the audience as they do the performers. Being girls, what they're going to wear is just as important as getting there, and they're all diving headfirst into hippie chic. Claire, my lucky fucking sister, has been charity shopping and came home with 2 cute sundresses, some dungaree shorts and a EnD t-shirt. She models them for Mum, wearing her rainbow wellies and knee socks with each. Converse would look better than wellies, I say when she asks my opinion. Yeah, but it's gonna be muddy in places, even if it doesn't rain, she replied. Anyway, Glastonbury's all about the wellies. I thought it was all about the music, I dryly retorted. It's the first week of June and my sister Claire and our cousin Alice have just bought their tent, sleeping bags and mats. They test their camping gear out by camping in the back garden. I can hear them talking long into the early hours, mostly about next week's festival. I sigh myself to sleep, wishing I could go too. A couple of days after that, I overheard my mum talking to Uncle Paul on the telephone and it's not good news. Alice has broken her ankle in a college hockey match and will not be going to Glastonbury. We visited her the next day. Her foot is in plaster from toe to knee and she needs crutches to get around. I was gutted for her. She was so looking forward to it, but now, she'll have to watch it on TV with her foot in a cast whilst the other 5 have the weekend of a lifetime. I guess she knows how I feel now. To make things doubly disappointing, it's far too late to get a refund, so the £240 ticket money has gone down the drain. The ticket isn't transferable either, since it has a photo of Alice printed on it. She tells us that she was so angry that she almost ripped the ticket to pieces, but instead is going to keep it as a reminder of the weekend of a lifetime she almost had. I wouldn't mind, but I packed my bag on Thursday afternoon. I was all set to go, then on Thursday evening. This, she moaned, sneering at her plaster cast. My sister laughed that she'd packed so early, suggesting it might have been bad luck to do so. I'm gonna pack on Tuesday night, at the very last minute, just to make sure, she claimed. It's Monday afternoon and Claire, Rebecca, Sally, Hannah, and Shannon are sat around the table, along with my mum. They are assuring her that they won't do anything stupid. I sat in the lounge, eavesdropping and watching TV whilst they discussed how to make the most of their festival experience. No drinking to excess, no drugs, no smoking in the tents, etc. Their plan is to drive overnight and Hannah, the eldest at 20, will be driving. They're hiring a minibus and aim to arrive in the early hours of Wednesday morning so they can get a decent camping spot before the huge crowds arrive on Thursday and Friday. Mum tells them to be aware of pickpockets and scammers and to be wary of strangers offering drinks, especially the scrumpy at £1 per gallon. It will get you drunk, but it will give you an apocalyptic hangover, Mum claimed. Nothing bad is going to happen if you smoke a bit of weed, it's the speed, LSD, ecstasy and anything described as a legal high you want to avoid. Both my mum and dad went in their youth and said it was a very different festival back then. Both Hannah and Shannon went last year and said it was really well organized with really tight security. In my parents' day there'd be people openly selling hash for cash, magic mushrooms and even crack and smack. My jaw dropped a little when Mum told them an anecdote regarding the purchase of a bag of weed from a scruffy-looking hippie. It turned out to be the most expensive bag of Colt's Foot ever. You tried to buy weed, my sister exclaimed. We were all young once. Mum shrugged. Now, Hannah, are you sure you're going to be okay driving overnight? Hannah said she was and would be spending most of Tuesday sleeping, and both Rebecca and Sally have a driving license so either could take over if necessary. I've planned 2 stops along the way so I can have a break and stretch my legs, one near Crewe and another near Gloucester, she explained. She's also found a 24 Asda where they can stock up on supplies. Well, it sounds like you've thought everything through, Mum said. I'm sure you'll all have the time of your life. On Tuesday, we visit Alice, who seems to have come round to the fact that she won't be going. She's still hobbling about on crutches and will be for the next month or 2. It's not just Glastonbury she'll miss, but the whole summer. Which is a real bummer. However, like me, she's hoping to get there in 2 years' time. Her plaster cast is covered with signatures and messages from her friends. The mantle is home to a number of get well soon cards. I feel more sorry for her than I do myself. At least I've spent all year knowing I'm not going whilst she'd spent it thinking she was. I suggest she spends the weekend at our house. She can have Claire's room and we could watch all the coverage on TV, sharing our misery that we're not there. Nice idea, but I'm sure you've got better things to do than look after an invalid, she said. I got the feeling that something was going on. When I moaned about us having to wait 2 whole years for our next chance to go, Alice said, well, you never know. I presumed she meant that it wasn't a certainty since the tickets are a lottery, but when I overheard my sister and Alice talking in hushed tones in the hallway, I grew suspicious of something. Maybe Alice was going to smuggle something in and now Claire's going to instead. Could it be a case full of booze? I doubt it would be drugs, but who knows? I sit in the lounge, watching TV with my aunt, uncle, and parents whilst trying to pick up on what's going on in the hall. I hear the front door open, the car unlock, the boot slam shut, and then Claire returns. We say our goodbyes and leave shortly afterwards. "What did you put in the boot?" I asked as we drove off. "Just some stuff that Alice got for the festival," Claire replied. "You're not smuggling booze in, are you?" I asked. "No," she replied. "You're allowed to take booze in, so long as it's not in glass." "Oh," I said. "Maybe it was just stuff. Stuff such as picnic gear and a camping stove, long life food and UHT milk. But if that is the case, why all the hushed tones and whispering in the hallway?" We went home and Claire began packing. Her tent, sleeping bag, camping mat and folding chair sat waiting in the hallway. We sat around tHE table and ate supper. Claire said something about this being her last proper meal before she returns, and by proper she meant at a table, with a knife and fork and a proper plate rather than a polystyrene tray or plastic dish. 5 days of burger and hot dogs and camping food. It sounds awful. They planned to set off around 11 p.m., taking it easy, having decent breaks and aimed to arrive around 7 a.m. The rest of the gang arrived at around 9 p.m. and then triple-checked that they had everything before loading the minibus. I happily helped and got excited on their behalf. Just before they were ready to set off, my sister opened the boot of our car and asked me to help her fetch Alice's stuff. She handed me a hardshell case, the one I presumed contained booze but more likely contains all their cooking gear. I took it to the van and Claire followed. Hannah was organizing the stowage, putting the hard cases in first, then the chairs and tents, followed by the lighter items such as mats, jackets and sleeping bags on top. I didn't really pay much attention as I handed her what she wanted. Once the van was loaded, Mum and Dad gave Claire a big hug and a final little pep talk. "And make sure you look after your brother," Mum added as she cast me a suspicious glance. "We will," Claire said as she turned to me. "In you get," she grinned. "What?" "In you get," she repeated. "You're coming too." My jaw dropped. "Really?" I yelped. "But I haven't got a ticket." Claire smiled. "Yes, you have." I looked at my parents who both smiled and nodded. I looked into the minibus and the 4 grinning faces, each beckoning me in. I'm not sure if I climbed in or was bundled on by my sister, but before I could even get my head round the news that I was going to, I was inside the minibus and we were off. I couldn't believe they'd got me a ticket and kept it a secret. I was shocked. I was excited. I was positively flabbergasted. I was told that I'd be going in on Alice's ticket and that my parents had paid for it. I presumed that they'd somehow managed to get her ticket transferred into my name. We drove through the night down winding country lanes for a good hour before finally reaching the M6 motorway. After another hour we turned off near Crewe and went to a 24-hour supermarket and spent half an hour in its cafe. Hannah topped up on caffeine and sugar. We sat and snacked and drank and enthused over what's to come. "I still can't believe you managed to get the ticket transferred into my name. This is going to be so awesome," I exclaimed. The others grinned and agreed. Claire told me that Alice's ticket hasn't exactly been transferred into my name. "What do you mean, not exactly?" I asked. "Well," she began. "It was too late for a refund and they refused to transfer the ticket in spite of the fact she broke her ankle, which is bang out of order," my sister told me. "So," she continued as my jaw slowly dropped. "Don't worry," she insisted. "It's only to get you through the gate." "But I don't look like Alice," I said. "There's a clear family resemblance," Claire said. She showed me Alice's ticket and said that all I need is some eyeliner and a bit of lippy and I'll look similar enough to the image on the ticket. Despite the fact that there is a strong family resemblance, I claimed I wouldn't look like my cousin even with makeup on, pointing out Alice's well-defined eyebrows as one glaring difference. "That can all be sorted with makeup," Claire told me. And once we're in, you can wash it off. And what if they don't let me in? They will, the girls collectively assured me. Hannah said that they'd already discussed that outcome and have made a pact. If one of us doesn't get in, none of us go in. Shannon, Hannah's younger sister, told me that they won't look that closely because there's going to be thousands of people going through the gate. They'll glance at your ticket, glance at you, and so long as both look vaguely the same, they'll let you through, she claimed. It's a production line. Bish bash bosh. They're more interested in what's in your bags than anything. Hannah agreed. Since both have been before, they know better than the rest of us. You'll have to dress like a girl too, just to be on the safe side. Hannah added. Are you okay with that? She asked. I gulped. Just until I'm through the gate. They nodded. That's the only place they're going to check the photo, my sister assured me. Once you're in, you're in. Don't they do random spot checks inside? I asked. No. Hannah claimed. They might say they do, but there's 170,000 people. It would be pointless. You'd need photo ID for buying booze, which you won't be, so you've nothing to worry about. Apart from trying to pass myself off as my female cousin. Leave that to us. Rebecca said. Anyway, it won't be the first time we've dressed you as a girl. Claire and Rebecca have been friends since junior school. They used to be practically joined at the hip, and I recall a couple of times when I was about 6 or 7 when we played dress up and they put me in one of Claire's old dresses. Being a bit of an emo, I'm no stranger to wearing a bit of eyeliner and painting my nails black, although I don't make a habit out of it. I still wasn't so sure it'd work and slumped into my hands and realized that by morning, I'll have a bit more stubble than Alice has on the ticket. You could have told me sooner that I could have at least had a shave. Already thought of that. Claire said. There's a razor and foam in your case, she informed me. And Alice said she packed you plenty of boyish clothes to see you through till Monday. Boyish? I quizzed. I didn't like the sound of boyish. Surely you had the forethought to pack me some of my own clothes. Claire grinned. She had. There's a case in the minibus with my things in it. But you'll have to carry Alice's case through the gate and leave yours in the minibus. Why? I quizzed. Having visited before, Hannah and Shannon told me that they security guards are only really interested in what's in our bags. They want to keep out drugs and weapons, which means all of our bags will likely be thoroughly searched. What we don't want is them to see you with a bag full of boys' stuff and then double-check your photo ID. So you're going in with a bag full of Alice's clothes, they told me. You've proper planned this, haven't you? I said as it was all explained to me. I'll go in disguised as Alice, and once we've got our wristbands, we'll be able to come and go without our tickets, and I, or one of them, can return to the minibus to collect my case of clothes. The case will be searched but my ID won't be checked, so I'll get back in no problem. The only problem I can think of where they might discover that you're not really called Alice is if they do a full search, my sister told me. Apparently, drugs are often concealed in a bra. If they say they're going to do that, just tell them you're trans and have been living as a female since the age of 11. They'll still search your bra, but they can't discriminate on gender, so they'll have to let you in. Will I be wearing a bra? I asked. All 5 of them nodded. I bit my lip. We continued on our journey from Crewe down through Birmingham and towards Cheltenham and Gloucester, where we'll be stopping once more so Hannah can have another rest. This second and final stop, I'm told, is when I'll become Alice for a few hours. I was silently crapping myself. The others tried to get some sleep, but I couldn't. I sat up front and kept Hannah company whilst they dozed in the back. Dawn broke and the Mendip Hills looked stunning, shrouded in mist. I still can't believe I'm actually going to Glastonbury. I said. I hope we get in. We will. Hannah assured. She told me that my sister and Alice all have a look of each other and that my hair is easily long enough to do something with. I've been thinking of getting it cut. I said as I swept my fringe off my face. Good job I didn't. I could put French braids in if you want, she said. What are those? I asked. She described 2 rows of plaits from fringe to neck and reckoned that my moppish hair would be long enough. She also suggested cutting some bangs. I didn't know what that meant either. Hannah told me that in America, they call a fringe bangs. The term always makes her smile, so she uses it whenever possible. Alice does have a fringe on the ticket photo, she still does, but it is 6 months old and she could have grown it out. I think I'll stick to those French things, I replied. So, Becky said it's not the first time you've dressed like a girl. Hannah said after a short, comfortable silence. What was that like? She asked. Just dressing up really. I was little and they were bored. They want to play schools, so they dressed me up. As a schoolgirl. I nodded. It was a yellow gingham dress. I described the other time when they put me in a bridesmaid's dress. I guess it was when gay marriage was legalized. I remember them saying that now 2 women or 2 men can marry each other, then boys can be bridesmaids and girls can be page boys. Rebecca had recently been a bridesmaid, so it was her dress they put me in. Hannah asked if I felt like a princess. I dryly told her that I felt like a boy in a bridesmaid's dress. She grinned. I grinned. You won't have been quite so little though, she said. Gay marriage only came in 3 years ago. Yeah. I cautiously replied. Maybe I've said too much, I figured. I was hoping she'd presume I was young and impressionable, but I was 13 at the time. I didn't really want to wear a bridesmaid's dress, but they pestered me into it whilst Mum and Dad were out. I felt like a dork, but it felt kind of elegant. I sheepishly confessed. Did they put makeup on you? She asked. When I was a bridesmaid? I asked. She nodded. I nodded and said that it didn't look very good, before telling her that I do wear eyeliner occasionally. But it's nothing like how Alice does hers. It will be when we stop off at Gloucester, she said, casting me a friendly grin. I grimaced at the thought of it. I like my cousin and I know that she's pretty and cool and always looks good, but the idea of me trying to look just like her. I can try, but I'm not convinced it'll work. This better work. I grumbled. It'll be such a disappointment to drive all this way only to be turned away. It would. But it won't. You've got to think positive, she advised. You've got Alice's ticket, Alice's ID, a case full of Alice's clothes, and as far as the goon at the gate is concerned, Alice's face too, she said. Quite convincingly too, I might add. Just make sure you have a really close shave. I will. I hesitantly replied. What if I get a rash? I asked. We'll cover it with foundation, she said. Are you gonna shave your legs too? A voice murmured from the back. A couple of sniggers followed. No. I defensively whined. I'll wear tights if I have to. If you shaved your legs you wouldn't have to, Claire said in a jovial yet drowsy tone. I thought you lot were asleep. I said. Nah. Just dozing. Rebecca replied. It's sweet that you remember playing schools. How could I forget? I dryly added. And you didn't need much pestering to wear my bridesmaid's dress, she added. Only because I had a crush on you and I was putty in your hands. I replied. You still have. Rebecca grinned. Nah, not anymore. You're not my type. I replied. I did have a crush on her for years, but that waned after I got myself an actual girlfriend. It didn't last very long, but it broadened my horizons, by which point, my big sister's best friend wasn't on it. And who is your type? Rebecca asked. Not telling. I replied as I cast her a grin. I don't have a type as in blonde hair or big boobs, but I do find Hannah incredibly attractive, and her sister Shannon is gorgeous. Sally's really cute too, and Rebecca's still a babe. I guess I'm at the age where I have a fondness for lots of girls regardless of type. If they look nice and seem friendly, then they'll catch my eye and occasionally my heart. We witnessed a spectacular sunrise as we pulled off at junction 11A and followed the sat-nav into the town center. Rather than paying extortionate service station prices, Hannah had located the 24-hour supermarkets prior to setting off where we wouldn't be ripped off. We pulled into the huge empty car park and got out. Becky, Shannon, and Sally headed inside. I hung back with Claire and Hannah whilst they routed through the pile of luggage. "Ah, here you are," Claire said, passing me a purple backpack which contained my toiletries. "Go and have a shave, and make sure it's a good one," she said. "Then come back here." I did as I was told and took myself to the gents. Inside the backpack is a wash bag inside that I find a razor and some foam. I sigh since it's a pink Venus and a canister of ladies' shaving foam, but waste no time getting on with shaving my face. The last thing I want is someone walking in to find me shaving with a lady's razor. Thankfully the girls didn't insist on me shaving my legs. I rinsed and checked there was no sign of stubble before exiting and returning to the minibus. "Where's Claire?" I asked. "Inside making sure they don't buy loads of crap," Hannah replied. An open vanity case sat menacingly on one of the seats. A flowery dress hung over the back of the same seat threatened me. Hannah drew my attention to a crop top, some panties, and some tights. She suggested that I get into character whilst she has a smoke. I said I didn't need the panties, but Hannah claimed that in the unlikely event that I have to use the trans excuse, then I would need them because if I was trans, the last thing I'd be wearing would be boys' undies. She left me alone in the minibus, shut the door and turned her back, as if standing guard. I changed into the clothes as discreetly as I could. The panties and tights were okay, but I felt I had to kneel down to don the crop top and the strappy summery dress to avoid being through the minibus's windows, not that there was another vehicle or person in the car park at this early hour. Once dressed, I tapped on the window before opening the door. Hannah turned and smiled. "Cute," she said. "Is there a t-shirt or a top I could wear?" I asked. "There is, but first you need some tits," she told me before stuffing my crop top with 2 pairs of tights and molding them into a convincing shape. I gladly donned a t-shirt even though it was a girl's one with a psychedelic butterfly print. "I'll do your hair first," she said. I sat and let her brush it. Then she pulled some product through it with a comb which apparently makes it more manageable. I sat silent and still with my hands on my lap. The hem of my dress lands halfway down where my opaque black tights take over. I've worn dresses before but never tights. They feel more comfortable than I expected, if a little warm. "This is really relaxing," I say as she plaits one side of my hair. "Does it look okay?" I asked. "It's going to look fab," she replied. "If we do pull this off, it's going to be the only time in my life that I'll be thankful I'm only 5'6". I said. "If I was normal height we'd have no chance." When she'd finished I had a look at my reflection. My hair has been growing over my face for so long that I'd forgotten what it looks like off my face. I don't look anything like my cousin though, but with the neat plaits arching back, I do look a little bit girly. Hannah got out the van to have another cigarette. She offered me one but I declined. But I did stand with her since the minibus was beginning to feel like a greenhouse. With my stocking feet in my own trainers. The breeze whipping around my thinly clad legs, my frock flapping against my lap and my hair not flapping at all. I felt like I'd jumped out of one skin and into another. "This feels weird," I said. "You look okay," she told me. "Even without makeup." "Really?" I asked. She nodded. "I don't look much like my cousin though." "No, but you will," she claimed as she looked me up and down. I looked me up and down too. She told me that my legs looked nice in tights. "You reckon?" I replied. She nodded and told me that everyone's legs look nice in tights, before stubbing out her cigarette butt on the tarmac. "Come on," she said. "Let's get you finished." We climbed back in the van. She began applying concealer and foundation before carefully painting my eyes with thick black eyeliner. It probably feels like I'm putting quite a lot on, she said as I tried my best to remain completely still and most importantly, to not blink. But she does wear it very heavy, she added. Hannah switched from one eye to the other, presumably to get both even. How's it looking? I asked. Okay, she cautiously replied. Have you got her ticket? I rummaged through Claire's bag and dug it out. Here. Hannah held it next to me. Yeah, we're getting there, she claimed. I might have to pluck your eyebrows though, just a little. I bit my lip and asked if they'd grow back. She assured me they would. How quickly? A few weeks, she replied. Okay. I said. Do what you have to. You sure? I nodded. We've come this far. I gulped. She rummaged in her vanity case and removed a pair of tweezers. She cocked my head to one side and began plucking. Does it hurt? She asked. No. I said. Not really. I added. She pushed my head the other way and began working on the other brow. Then, after a few minutes of plucking, she evened them up before defining them with a pencil. She sat back and smiled at me. I've never put makeup on a boy before, she said. Well, there's a first time for everything, I guess. There certainly is. Alice, she replied. Can I have a look? I asked. In a bit, she replied. You need eyeshadow, mascara, and lippy first. She began with the eyeshadow, which took a couple of minutes. Then she carefully brushed the mascara into my lashes. I can't imagine having to do this every day, I said as she selected a lipstick, using the photo on the ticket as a guide. I guess it's a bit quicker when you're doing your own. It depends, she replied. Some days I wear just a touch, some days I wear loads. I guess it depends on how ugly I feel. You're not ugly, I said. She smiled and said neither are you before finally choosing a suitable shade of lipstick. In fact, she said as she removed the lid. You're a bit of a babe, she claimed before painting my lips in a pinky red. I'm sure you're only saying that, I grumbled. She handed me a mirror and I look at myself. Blimey, that really doesn't look like me, I exclaimed. I'm not sure it looks like Alice either. It's near enough, she claimed. She held the ticket alongside the mirror so I could see my reflection alongside the photo of my cousin. You reckon? I think so, she said, adding I hope so. I like my eyebrows, I said. Although I'm not sure what Mum and Dad will say next Monday. Where once there were slugs now sits a pair of slender symmetrical arches. Not too thin and not too thick, tapering elegantly towards my temples. In fact, I'm not sure what anyone will say when they see me like this, I added. Half an hour ago I was more worried about wearing a dress and tights than wearing makeup, but if there's one thing that really makes me look like a girl, it's the makeup. Your mum and dad'll be fine. The only person who didn't know you'd be becoming Alice was you. And given the choice, I'd have never gone through with it, I said. We know, she grinned. I noticed my sister and the others exiting the supermarket pushing a trolley full of supplies. Hannah turned. About time, she said. I was just about to send you in to find them. As they approached, Hannah slid open the door of the minibus and stepped out. You were ages, she said. We had to wait till 6 a.m. before they'd sell us any booze. Shannon replied. And your ID was okay? Hannah asked. Shannon grinned and nodded. Knowing that Shannon isn't much older than myself, and is therefore underage. You've got fake ID, I exclaimed as I peered out of the door. Shannon began to reply but her dropping jaw silenced her. I gulped and glanced at the others. Peter, you look ace, my sister exclaimed. Alice, Hannah corrected as I shyly stepped out. We can't make any mistakes like that at the gate. A shower of compliments came from each of them. They love my hair, my makeup, my legs look nice, but the comment that makes me feel most embarrassed is nice tits. According to them, they're small, but not too small. Rebecca described them as unpretentious. I don't even know what that means. I bashfully replied. Do you reckon I'll pass as Alice or will they see right through me? I asked. You'll pass, they claimed. I wasn't so sure. I figured my makeover was complete, but it wasn't quite over. Apparently I need accessories. A simple silver chain was placed around my neck along with a string of beads. Numerous metal and leather bangles were hung around my wrists along with a friendship band, some more beads, a purple charity wristband and finally, a small girl's watch. Hello Kitty. I dryly said as I observed its girly face and pink strap. Cute. I sarcastically added. You are, my sister said as she asked the girl's opinion on a choker. Black, green or burgundy? She asked, holding 3-inch wide lengths of velvet. A small ferrule and silver clasp is attached to the ends and each has its own metal pendant. Sally liked the black one with a metal daisy whilst Rebecca liked the green one with an OM symbol. I preferred the burgundy one since that has a CND sign hanging from it, but questioned why I needed a choker as well as the necklaces. To conceal your Adam's apple, she said. I allowed her to fasten it around my neck as the others smiled and grinned at me. Hannah told me that I wouldn't have to say very much at all at the gate, but advised me to try to speak softly when I do. To camp. Claire said when I softly replied. What about this? I attempted. That's just a whisper. Shannon giggled. I sighed. Okay, no, I took a breath. Okay. I said. Better, but a bit meek. This is never going to work. I growled. Couldn't he pretend to be mute? Sally suggested. Do you know sign language? No. I groaned, just as Hannah corrected her with she. I gulped. We packed the supplies with the rest of the luggage, which was a complex game of tHis. The jackets, wellies, sleeping bags, mats and camping chairs came out, the bags of food, bottles of water and far too many cans of beer went in, followed by all the lightweight stuff. Claire gave me a pair of wellies and told me I'd need them. tHis. I sneered. Well, her other pair were pink with polka dots. Claire told me. We figured you'd prefer these, she added. The shiny black Wellington boots are covered in white and yellow daisies. She also gave me a pair of rather thick knee socks, or welly socks as she called them. At least these were rather sedate, being burgundy. I sat in the minibus, kicked off my trainers and donned the socks and boots. I figured I was finally ready, but Claire told me that I needed one more thing. What are those? I asked as she opened her hand. Earrings, she replied. Don't worry, they are magnetic, she added. She placed one on each lobe and I could certainly feel them pinching me. They're uncomfortable, but I guess it's better than actually having to have them pierced, and Alice is wearing earrings on both her photo ID and festival ticket. We embark on the final leg of our journey and rejoined the M5 so far as Bridgewater, then we hit the A roads once more and for the first time on our overnight journey, traffic. From Glastonbury town to the festival site we crawled at an absolute snail's pace. It would have been quicker to walk those final few miles. I've been stuck in traffic jams before but never in one like this. On the upside, this one has a real atmosphere. There's plenty of foot traffic too. People with larger-than-life rucksacks form an almost unbroken chain alongside the slow-moving vehicles. It's as if the festival vibe is emanating from the site, pulling people in from far and wide and they will get there no matter what. Everyone is smiling or grinning. Everyone is getting excited. They wave and say hello as our eyes catch theirs. We wave back but I remain silent, wondering if they can see who I'm pretending to be, or who I really am. The slow crawl goes on and on. And on and on. And on it goes. Rebecca takes over at the wheel. Hannah and Sally stroll alongside smoking cigarettes. Even with all the windows open, and it being barely 7 a.m., it's hot and humid inside the minibus. I've long since kicked of my Wellington boots and thick welly socks. Claire suggests I get out and walk for a while, or take my tights and t-shirt off. I can't take my tights off because of my legs and I'm reluctant to leave the van because there's too many people, but I do remove my t-shirt, revealing my short strappy frock in its entirety and the broad lacy straps of the crop top beneath. So, what's it feel like? Being a girl? Claire asked. Weird. I said as I looked down at myself and my chest in particular. It's certainly an experience I won't forget in a hurry. I presume Mum and Dad know that this is what you had in mind? I asked. She grinned and nodded and told me that the only reason they didn't tell me is because I'd never go through with it. Plus, she added. Nothing beats a surprise, she grinned. It's certainly a surprise. I said. I still can't quite believe it. I keep thinking I'll wake up and find myself at home in my own bed. And if you did, Shannon asked. Would it have been a good dream or a bad dream? I thought for a moment. A good dream, I guess, but it would be pretty bad to wake up and discover that I'm not going to Glastonbury after all. Good answer. Rebecca grinned. And I don't think anyone would mistake you for a boy. I certainly hope not. I frowned. The slow crawl toward the site was nothing compared to the virtual standstill on site. By the time we'd reached the vehicle gate it was 8:30 a.m. and by the time we'd finally parked the minibus it was just gone 9:15 a.m. We unpacked, taking a rucksack, a sleeping bag, camping mat and folding chair each. Sally, Shannon and myself also carried a tent each plus a carrier bag full of supplies. Claire, Rebecca and Hannah carried a crate of booze each. We left some stuff in the van but nothing of value to us or anyone else, although one bag does contain my male clothes. The girls began using the name Alice very often as we bundled all our gear toward the pedestrian gate and the security guards. I tried to speak softly and effeminately when replying, with varying degrees of success. I found myself uttering an elongated yeth more often than anything else. It's easier when it's just the one syllable that hangs somewhere between my normal voice and a higher falsetto. I keep telling myself that my name is Alice Jackson and I'm 18 years old. I'm more worried about getting my age wrong more than my name, although either would be equally disastrous. I check the time on my girly watch. It's almost 10 a.m. and we're still queuing to get through security. But now that we're actually parked up and slowly approaching the gate, it's finally sinking in that I'm really here and it's not some very vivid dream. I gulp with the realization that a mere 12 hours ago, I had no idea that I'd be coming, let alone disguising myself as my cousin. In fact, that bit still hasn't sunk in. In my peripheral vision I spy the lumps on my chest. I worry that they're not convincing. Maybe they're too high, too low or too small. Maybe they've gone wonky. In spite of the constant worry that I'm not convincing enough, I feel strangely confident. After all, I'm just one face amongst hundreds. Thousands even. I've shared glances with plenty of strangers and no one, so far as I can tell, has batted an eyelid. I glance at my sister, Hannah, and Shannon before casting my eyes at those around me. There's people of all ages and all types, goths and emos, punks, hippies, townies, chavs, even some normal people. Lots, in fact. All the standing and shuffling is tiresome. The day begins to catch up on us. I haven't slept since I got up yesterday and the others have only dozed. My eyes become heavy and I'm not the only one to emit a discreet yawn. Finally we're at the first checkpoint. I hand over my ticket. The guard looks at it, then me, then the ticket once more and hands it back. And that's it. I didn't even have to say anything. I join Hannah and Shannon on the other side and we loiter for Claire, Rebecca, and Sally. We dump our bags on a big table where another team of security guards check them. They don't root through every bag but do at least have a quick peep and give them a squeeze. I place my bag on the table and she asked if it was my bag. I nod and mutter yeah. Been traveling all night, she asked as she unzipped my case. I nodded and smiled through pursed lips. trying not to yawn. I became nervous as she opened it all the way to reveal a case full of clearly girls' clothing. There's a pair of pink Converse high tops which she rummages inside of. A bag of makeup, a small mirror and various toiletries that she checks. She lifts a few layers of clothing to check beneath. I spy underwear with lace and gulp. She checks beneath those and reveals a pack of sanitary towels. I gulp again. She shuts the case, zips it closed and hands it back to me. Thanks. I meekly say. They had a good search through one of our tents and Hannah, who was wearing cargo pants, had her pockets turned out, but my case was the only one they checked. Getting our wristbands was almost as uneventful as getting through the first level. They looked at my ticket, then looked at me. Looked at the ticket once more, then tore off the stub and handed it back, before fastening a band around my wrist. I felt a huge grin sweep my face as I approached my sister who'd gone through first. "We're in," she grinned. "We are." I grinned. "Can I get changed now?" "Why so keen?" "You look ace," she said. "Your eyes look gorgeous." I was only joking, anyway, my clothes are back in the van. I replied. "Oh yeah," she realized, before reminding me that Alice did pack some boyish clothes for me. They didn't look very boyish when it was being searched. I said. "Good job you thought of that. Got to give Alice the credit for that one." "Was it all her idea?" I asked. "Not all of it," Claire replied. "It was Dad's idea to buy her ticket and surprise you with it. But when it couldn't be transferred, it was Mum who said that all you'd need is bit of makeup and you'd more or less match the photograph on the ticket, and it kind of snowballed from there," she told me. "I wish you'd told me beforehand, but I'm kinda glad you didn't," I said. "I'd have only got cold feet and backed out." "Oh, I dunno. You've dressed as girl before," my sister reminded me. "Not in public though." "You have now," she smiled. "I certainly have," I thought. "Finally," Claire exclaimed as Hannah came through the gate. "What took you?" "Needed the loo," she sighed. "I've drank far too much coffee today." "I bet you have," I said. "Hey, well done for getting us here," I added. "It can't have been easy doing all the driving." "It wasn't bad, and you're welcome," she smiled. "I feel like I could sleep for a week though," she added. "Me too," I replied, chuckling. The others soon followed through the gate, proudly waving their wristbands and grinning from ear to ear. We trudged through the campgrounds, lugging all our gear between us. Hannah and Shannon knew exactly where we should camp, and it seemed like about 3 miles from the gate. They want to be close to some big trees to shield our tents from the morning sun as well as away from any major thoroughfare. Us novices would have just camped anywhere, but Hannah and her sister were adamant that the right spot will make all the difference. We trudged and trudged over the grass, past tents and toilets and huge piles of firewood, headed towards some distant trees. "I guess we don't want to be too close to those trees," I suggested. "They're gonna become one big toilet." "That's a good point, Alice," Shannon said. "So long as we're in their shadow when it counts. And we're not downwind of them," I added. We decided on a patch and put down our tents. They went up quite quickly and we wasted no time getting inside and trying to get our heads down for a while. "It's nice finally getting these off," I said as I pulled of my tights. "It's always nice taking tights off." Claire grinned. "Were they itchy?" "Not really," I replied. "Just a bit thick for the middle of summer, I guess," I said. "I wonder if Alice packed some thin ones." I wondered as I got myself horizontal and pulled my sleeping bag over my lower half. Claire began to speak but paused. "So, you're not planning on going back to the van anytime soon?" she asked. "I might go back after a kip, but I might stay," I mimed the quotes. As Alice. "For a bit longer, till we've done a proper recce." "A proper recce?" Claire quizzed. "Yeah," I replied. They might have upped security this year, they might check IDs on their way into the main stages, who knows until we've had a proper look around. We're in. All you need is the wristband and they don't have a name on them. I know, but I'm just paranoid, I guess. I got in under false pretenses and I don't want to get thrown out. I said. Plus, I paused. What? Claire eventually asked. Nothing. I said. Go on, she prompted. Well, there's me and 5 girls. Will I fit in if I'm just me? Would I feel out of place as the only guy? Or, should I just? I looked down at my frock and chest, still bulging with 2 spare pairs of tights. Actually, I said, reaching in and pulling them out of my crop top. What? Claire asked. Thin tights. I said, holding 2 pairs of scrunched-up nude-colored tights. They are like what Mum wears, but they'll be okay, won't they? I said. To hide my hairs? I added. Peter, my sister said. If you're going to spend the next 5 days, she mimed the quotes. As Alice, then you're going to shave your legs, and your pits. Maybe not. I said. I get your thinking though, and you have come this far, maybe it would be more fun if we were all girls together, she said. Your clothes are in the minibus if you change your mind. True. I said. I'll see how I feel after some sleep. I said as put my head on my pillow. I might wake up and think it was a stupid idea. You might wake up and find yourself at home, she grinned. And it was all just a really good dream, she smiled. Oh, I hope not. I said as my eyelids grew heavier, and heavier, and heavier. I always found that odd because when I was a kid, I never imagined my mum getting into trouble. In my mind, mums were always well behaved at school and home. That proves how illogical I could be at times because my vision didn't seem compatible with the oft-used phrase, if I would have spoken to my mother like that, I would have got what for. I suppose the use of the word if and not when makes the difference. When old Mrs. Evans died, young Miss Evans took over. Not only did she take over the shop, but she continued her mother's methods. The Avengers stayed where they were, and from time to time would be brought out from the cupboard to administer summary justice to the bottoms of those who stuffed Aero bars, Cadbury's Flake or Beano summer editions into their pockets or bags. I was with Freddie Lewis and Sally Stone when Miss Evans saw them pinching a bag of marbles. I saw that you too. Right, out in the back room now. Don't argue or I'll tell your mums. I suppose nowadays we would say the unfortunate duo was between a rock and a hard place. I knew that neither of them got spanked at home, but the mention of the word mum prompted a slow, heads hung low, walk towards the back room. I left the shop and waited outside. 10 minutes later out they came with the words, and you can tell your friends what will happen to them if I catch them nicking things from my shop, ringing in their ears. They looked sorry but not distressed, and of course told me that she really laid it on hard, but that they didn't cry. What did she use and how did you get it? I asked although I knew the answer. On the bottom with the slipper, replied Sally. Me first, then Freddie. Had to bend over the back of her sofa. Did Freddie see your punishment? I asked with a hint of horror. Nah, when one was getting it, the other had to stand facing the wall. These were questions one just had to ask. I never saw the back room, not because I was a good boy, but because I never got caught. Let me explain that boast. I only stole once from that or any other shop, and of course, I had a good reason. We never had computer games and board games would somehow bore me. I became inventive and would make my own. I had a thing about competitions, soccer, rugby, you name it, I would have a special cup or tournament for it. I even had a weather cup. 16 cities from the Northern Hemisphere would compete against each other based on the daily weather reports in the newspaper. Athens 65 v Nice 64, Rome 67 v Munich 70. Munich will play Athens in the final. On one memorable occasion, London made the final against Paris, but lost by about 10 degrees. My games were simple but a little messy. I would make a list of at least 16 teams, sometimes as much as 512. After getting a special World Soccer book, and write them down on paper and then tear up pieces of paper, each with a number on it. These I would put into a brown paper bag, my version of the velvet bag used in FA Cup draws, and pull out the teams. Manchester United v Cardiff City, Liverpool v Dorking. I always wanted a giant killer in the competition. The matches were decided by 2 packs of cards. Each team would have 20 cards, but the stronger teams would have more 1s, 2s, 3s and 4s, while the weaker teams would have more nils. I would then pick a card for each team. Sometimes I had to pick a card 3 or 4 times before my team won. But I was fair and limited it to 5 attempts. Manchester United 0 Cardiff City 7. That's better. It was such a competition that made me to resort to crime. I lost the 2 packs of cards. I didn't exactly lose the packs, it was more that Tommy Simpkins threw my bag in the river. Never mind my exercise books or my sandwiches. How are Cardiff City and Liverpool going to play the cup final? I made a decision. I went to the candy box. I browsed at just about everything in the shop waiting for the right moment. Finally, it came. The phone in the back room rang and I was left alone. Quick as a flash, I lifted a flap in the counter, stuffed 2 packs of cards into my pocket, and ran like mad, remembering to replace the flap. My team did win, but I lost. That event bothered me for months. I stood looking at the shop and the memories came flooding back. No point standing outside in the rain, I would go in and buy something for old time's sake. A woman in her 50s stood behind the counter and smiled when I walked in. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked. It was her. There was no mistake. No, just looking, thank you. I looked for the jars of gobstoppers, hard-boiled sweets that responsible adults warned you about, but there were no jars anymore, only display stands. "I am surprised this shop is still here," I said. She smiled. "Oh, been close to closing a few times, but managed to stay open." "Have you been here before?" I told her who I was and how long ago it had been. She looked thoughtful, then a look of recognition came over her face. "I remember you. You're Mrs. Wilkins' little boy, only you're not so little anymore." Again she smiled. 30 years older and still attractive. I appreciated her good looks then, and I appreciate them even more now. I had to ask. "Do you still have the Avengers?" She burst into laughter. "Oh, bless my soul, the Avengers. Yes, I still have them somewhere, but of course I never use them now." I could tell that as she was looking at me, she was processing a picture of me 30 years ago, bottomed over her sofa. I felt a little embarrassed. "I can't recall ever using them on you though." She had run the picture through her memory and came up no matches found. It should have been different, and I always wished it had been. No, I was never caught. Oops. That gives the game away. Once more she laughed. "Why, you little devil. Bit too late now though." Was it? We started talking and she asked if I would like to come back after the shop closed for a cup of coffee and a talk about old times. I thanked her and said I would. I had never seen the back room before, and as I sat on the sofa, I wondered if it was the same one that Freddie and Sally had bent over all those years ago. I wondered where they were now, and if they still remembered the incident. Maybe they just shrugged the whole thing off as one of those childhood escapades. I took the coffee and thanked her. It seems that Freddie was now an accountant and Sally was in advertising and chairperson of the local Single Parents Association. Her teenager daughter was delightful and sometimes helped in the shop. Mr. Williams, our old headmaster, was found hanged in his cell in the special protection wing. I guess the rumors were true, but no one ever listened. Perhaps they're not listening now. Perhaps they do listen though, and perhaps they act. Others listen, and act. They are in a position to do so, often without consequence. We continued our talk about things long ago, when friends only had chicken pox or mumps. The days when each day, when one thinks about it, were more or less the same. Constant, predictable. But maybe I was lucky. Maybe I was protected from so many things that in my day were not mentioned but now are all too familiar. Coffee turned into an invite to stay for dinner. Dinner, or rather the after-dinner brandy and old records, gave me the chance to mention the deck of cards. I raised the subject just as Rod Stewart sang, "Ever since I was a kid in school, I messed around with all the rules, apologized and then realized, I'm not different after all." "Do you remember selling packs of cards?" I asked. She smiled. Not a smile of recognition or remembrance, but a smile that said, "Yes I do, and I know what you are going to say next, you naughty boy." Going Home Part 2. I told her about the 2 packs of cards and my reasons for wanting them so badly. She laughed. I told her how I felt afterward. She smiled. "Perhaps it would have been better if I had caught you. A sore bottom is a lot better than all that soul-searching you went through." Yes. It would have been. The topic of conversation changed, but at every opportunity, I brought it back to the pack of cards and the Avengers. Looking at Maureen, I had found out she did have a first name after all, brought back funny, familiar, forgotten feelings. That statement is not quite right. Some feelings are never forgotten and sometimes are not all that funny. She certainly was attractive, and with 30-odd years more experience behind me, I recognized the signs of mutual attraction. Once more I found an excuse to mention the incident. She rose from her chair with an air of determination. "One way to sort this out," she said, and walked out of the room. I heard cupboard doors opening and shutting, the sounds of cardboard boxes falling from precarious perches. 10 minutes later she returned. She was carrying John from the Avengers. She stood behind the sofa and said, "Right, let's be having you. Over here please." I looked at her with what I hoped was purely a look of amazement, but which I suspected was tinged with other feelings. Funny, familiar feelings. "You are not serious," I said with a lack of conviction that even failed to convince me. "Do I look as though I am not serious? Over here now." I made the pretense of walking to the assigned spot under protest. "Bend over the back of the sofa. Palms of your hands flat on the seats." I bent over as instructed, or rather, ordered. This way saves a lot of time and bother. "Now let's get on with it, shall we?" Whack! The first stroke landed squarely across the center of my bottom. I did not have too much time to think as the second and third landed very shortly afterward. "Steal from my shop." Whack! "Would you?" Whack! The fourth stroke was a little slower. She was taking care to select the right spot. Whack! "Maybe next time." Whack! "You will think twice." Whack! "Young man. Get up please and make yourself respectable." 30 years after the incident I received my just desserts. She laid it on really hard, but I didn't cry. I looked at Maureen and saw a smile spread across her face. "Is that a pack of cards in your pocket, or are you pleased at what happened?" I returned the smile. "What do you think?" I asked. She put her arms around my neck and said, "I think that you are a very naughty boy." I could not help but agree with her philosophy. At this stage I would like to thank the 1967 Cardiff City soccer team, without whose help this would never have been possible. You may not have scored too many times, but I did. A Sissy's mother's wish. I thought for a while about the question I had been asked before answering. "I really do not know," I said. My brother looked me up and down and smiled. "Because it's fun," he told me as he jumped off the dresser and twirled around in his pink satin pajamas, grinning from ear to ear. "Boys' clothes are just so," he said, forging a frown. "Boring," he smiled. "But girls' clothes." Meanwhile, their mother is traveling interstate and wondering how James and John are getting on. It's been 3 years since their father passed away, and ever since that fateful day, she's been more afraid of losing her 2 sons than anything. She feared that one day they'd meet a young lady and marry, and as the old saying goes, a son is a son till he finds a wife, but a daughter's a daughter for life. It's been 8 months since her eldest son James was introduced to the pleasures of femininity, although for him it wasn't very pleasurable to begin with. At the age of 16, she sent James to a finishing school in New Hampshire where he lives as a boarder and learns to be a lady, but as far as he knew at the time, and as far as his younger brother John is currently aware, it's supposed to be a normal boarding school, albeit a very expensive one. James was dropped in at the deep end, stripped of his masculinity, corseted and feminized, and has come a long way. For John, however, he's going to receive the softly approach, and all being well, by the time he enrolls at the same finishing school he'll be a far more willing student from the outset. James and John spent the whole weekend playing dress up. James teaches John how to apply makeup, with the expected results for a beginner, and ends up doing it for him. John finds the whole experience thrilling but can't really fathom why his mother encouraged his brother. The only answer he's received as to why is because it's fun. So, when mother returns, shall we be dressed as girls or boys? John asks as he rolls a silk stocking up his hairless leg. What do you think? James replied. I don't know. John replied as he fastened the suspender clip. That's why I'm asking, he said. He sighed and added, for all I know you could be teasing me and mother's got nothing to do with it. James assured his brother that he wasn't teasing. Why would I do that? He asked. To get me in trouble, John replied. It wouldn't be the first time. But I'd be in just as much trouble. Not if you made sure it was just me wearing mother's clothes, John said as he looked at his reflection, his long slim legs clad in expensive silk stockings, held in place by a suspender belt that's hidden by a pair of champagne French knickers. From his shoulders hangs a matching satin camisole, trimmed with lace and decorated with a tiny satin bow. James assured his brother that he wasn't plotting anything of the sort. It's up to you what you're wearing when she returns, he said. When their mother did return from her trip, both James and John wore their own clothes. John made sure that they'd left her room and wardrobe exactly as she left it 3 days previously because part of him didn't believe that the endeavor was his mother's idea. After a warm welcome, she sent James upstairs with her cases and asked John if they'd been having fun and asked what they'd been doing whilst she was away. Not much really, he guiltily replied. No, she replied. I was hoping that James might have shown you some of the things he's been learning at school. What kind of things? John hesitantly asked. Oh, you know, his mother casually replied. Things like shaving your legs and shaping your eyebrows, she said. Wearing my makeup, my lingerie, that kind of thing. John gulped. Is that what he does at school? You haven't answered my question yet, she replied. And if I'm not mistaken, it does look like you've at least shaped your eyebrows. John sheepishly stammered. Yeah. James did it. And the rest? She asked. John gulped and nodded. What felt like a silly, impulsive and maybe even naughty bit of fun now feels shameful and deeply humiliating in the cold light of day. John reiterated his question about what James does at school. I think you'll find that he does lots of different things at school. Pampering, preening and enjoying nice clothes is just a small part of it. Shyly, John asked his mother if it was her idea and she said it was. Why? He asked. Because if you can learn to enjoy it, you'll be much happier when you start boarding school, she told him. What kind of school is it? John asked. His mother replied and John quizzed, You mean, like girls go to? Of course, only this one accepts boys too, she replied. She glanced towards the door and the sound of James returning. They waited in silence for a few seconds until he appeared. John's being a bit shy about what you two got up this weekend, she said. James told her exactly what they'd done, from showing his brother how to shave his legs and plucking his eyebrows, to trying on her underwear, clothes, and nightwear. And did he enjoy it? She asked. John gulped and felt increasingly guilty when his brother told her that he did. He loved your blue baby doll, he added. Who wouldn't? Their mother grinned. Once you've realized just how lovely some ladies' garments feel against the flesh, there's no going back, she said. And I think by doing it this way, John's transition won't be traumatic like yours was. A frown crossed James' face and he hung his head a little. I wish I'd been a bit more willing and hadn't tried to fight it, he said, before wishing he'd been forewarned too. Well, you came round eventually, his mother said. If John was the eldest, it would have been he who'd been dropped in at the deep end and you'd be in his position now. John listened intently as he tried to get his head around just what was going on. What position? He asked. Being mentored by your big brother, his mother replied. By the time you start finishing school, you could be halfway to being a lady, providing you enjoyed the weekend as much as James says you did. John couldn't deny anything that his brother had told his mother, but he also couldn't allow himself to admit it either. Yes, he enjoyed playing dress-up all weekend, but now some of the finer details of the boarding school he'll soon be attending have been revealed. What seemed sweet is beginning to taste a little bit sour. Why do you want me to be a lady? He hesitantly asked, glancing at his brother and correcting his question. Or us? Because boys always betray their parents, and since your father passed on, I can't risk you betraying me, she said. We won't betray you, John claimed. He wanted to add, what makes you think we would, but his mother interjected with, I know you won't. After a brief uncomfortable silence, at least on John's part, she added, so, now I know what you two have been doing. Aren't you going to ask me about my trip? How was your trip? John asked. It was very nice, thank you, she replied. And I brought you present, she told him. James asked if she'd brought him one too. You've already got one, she smiled. What is it? John asked. His mother grinned and said, I'll show you later. She paused to observe his reaction, and although John wasn't bursting with anticipation, he did seem a little disappointed that he'd have to wait and see. She decided to give him a hint and said, it's something for you to wear. After a weird and wonderful weekend being introduced to the joys of femininity, John laid in his bed that evening wearing the baby blue baby doll nightie and with a heart full of worry. He also wore the gift his mother had given him, and it was the very last thing he expected. He didn't want to touch it, but he couldn't help himself. His brother advised him to try not to think about it, but that's far easier said than done. A nervous yet inquisitive hand slid down his short satin nightie, raised it and reached beneath the frilly elastic waistband of his baby doll panties. Its sole intention is to feel the very thing it didn't want to feel. John gulped as he ran his trembling fingers over and around the smooth steel cage and tiny brass padlock that encased his boyhood, trying desperately not to think about it. Regression Formula. Mary Jones attended college and she has graduated with a 2-year Associate in Science degree. During college she became friends with Dr. Sylvia Drake, her college professor. Sylvia confided in Mary about her secret regression formula. Experiments show the regression serum works great when injected. Mary took an interest in the formula and contacted Dr. Sylvia Drake after graduating. Mary has a brother who is a pain in the butt. He is living with Mary and don't have a job at age 19. Mary is presently 21 years old, an average-size lady for her age. Bruce, her brother, is also average height and weight for his age. Mary has long brown hair and so does Bruce. Bruce has the attitude that his sister should take care of him. When Mary contacted Dr. Sylvia Drake, she found out the new improved regression formula actually shrinks up those injected only one time. The formula called X151 was obtained to give to Bruce. Dr. Drake warned that the effect is permanent. The regression formula alters your DNA after the injection. A safe but certain shrinking begins 1 hour after injection. The person's mind slowly regresses too, but all adult consciousness does not disappear. Mary feels this is perfect for her lazy brother. For hours after the formula is injected, the subject is the size of a small toddler. Their mind is like a child's with a faint memory of actually being an adult. Mary feels since Bruce wants to be taken care of, that is exactly what she will do. Bruce will need to be taken care of once he is small like a toddler. Mary has plans that include diapers, cute toddler girls' clothing, and some babying. Mary can't wait to have a toddler girl to take care of. The story takes place in Jackson, Mississippi in the year 2015. Mary has a nice 3-bedroom condo in the suburbs. Mary has the master bedroom with a bath and Bruce sleeps in one bedroom. Bedroom 2 is empty, but that will change. Today is Saturday with Mary and Bruce sitting at the lunch table. How many job interviews did you go on this week? Mary asked. I bet you sat at home all day while I worked my butt off. Mary does heavy work at a local laundry in spite of her college degree. Someday she hopes to be a high school science teacher. For now, she does what she has to make a living. Hard work pays well too. I am feeling rejected after being turned down for employment so many times last week, Bruce said. I did not apply for any jobs this week. That is the wrong attitude, little brother, Mary said. After a nourishing lunch, Bruce went to his bedroom. He did not do the dishes like he was told or take out the trash. Mary concludes the regression serum must be injected today. She goes to Bruce's room. I will give you your allowance in spite of you being lazy, Bruce, Mary said, entering his bedroom. Bruce is pleased to hear this, being broke. Bruce is sitting at his desk using the computer. Mary sets the $50 on his desk and stands behind Bruce. She takes the injection and sticks Bruce in the back of his left shoulder. The entire vial of serum is gone in seconds. Hey! What the heck was that shot in my shoulder? Bruce asked. How dare you give me an injection? Relax, brother, that was only a vaccine to prevent the flu that is going around, Mary said. You should have told me about this first, Bruce insisted. I don't like shots, you know. That is why I did not tell you about it, Bruce, Mary said. You need to rest for about 4 hours. Bruce is a little tired because he did not sleep well last night. He lays on the bed and falls asleep in less than an hour. Bruce is sound asleep taking a nap. Mary calls Toddler Town and tells Harry to deliver her order right away. Mary is setting up the other bedroom as a nursery for Bruce. About an hour after Bruce began his nap, the Toddler Town truck shows up at the condo. 2 nice men turn Mary's empty spare room into a toddler's nursery. All that Mary ordered is for a toddler girl. There is a crib that is pink with white side rails. A matching diaper table is in place. A high chair is put in the nursery. After the men carry in several boxes, they leave. Mary hangs up Disney princess posters, Hello Kitty posters, and Pooh Bear posters. Mary empties one box which contains both Pampers and Huggies in a size 4. These are good for a toddler, 30 to 40 pounds. Dr. Drake said they should be perfect after the shrinkage takes place. The other box contains plastic baby panties and some toddler girls' clothing. Shelves were installed along one wall. They are stocked with these items. The basic plastic baby panties are frosty pink, frosty yellow, baby blue, and milky white. Mary smiles doing this while her brother Bruce is slowly shrinking while sleeping. His mind is slowly regressing as well. Mary has plastic rumba panties that are pink with white frills across the backside. These are all stocked in plain sight on the shelves. Diapers are stacked along with plastic panties next to them. Toddler girls' onuses in size medium are put away. The plastic panties are all size medium. Dr. Sylvia Drake gave an accurate estimate that Bruce would end up between 30 and 40 pounds. His long hair will remain long. All signs of adulthood will disappear. Bruce's pubic hair will be gone along with any facial hair, leg hair, or body hair. The last items to go on the shelves are girls' socks, a few skirts, half-slips, girls' t-shirts, and girls' shorts. In the closet are toddler girls' dresses and full slips along with short nylon nightgowns. For hours after giving Bruce the injection, Mary hears crying from his bedroom. What will Bruce look like? Did the regression formula work? Will he really be between 30 and 40 pounds? All Mary's questions are answered when she enters Bruce's room. Oh my gosh, Bruce is a little toddler laying in a wet bed, Mary said to herself after entering the bedroom. He pissed the bed like a toddler and is very small. The regression formula worked just like promised. What has happened to me? Bruce asked, noticing he wet the bed and is very small. What was in that shot you gave me? Your memory will fade but not disappear, Mary said. I gave you a regression formula injection. Bruce's mind is foggy, but he knows he is not a toddler. How in the world did he shrink up so small? His clothes are huge now, but Bruce is little. Mary is pleased with the results of the regression serum. She goes over to Bruce's desk and picks up the $50. She can use this to buy more diapers when needed. Mary picks up the large clothes Bruce shrunk out of. They are wet with pee and so is his bed. Incontinence is a result of the regression drug. Why did you do this to me? Bruce asked, trying to remember his previous life. Because you refused to be an adult and go to work, Mary said, because you act like I should take care of you for some reason. I will take care of you completely now, starting with getting you in a diaper and plastic baby panties, Mary informed little Bruce. Bruce knows what that means but can't do a thing to stop Mary. She picks up Bruce, who is naked, and carries him to the nursery. Bruce is placed on a diaper table and he knows what is taking place is not like it should be. I am an adult, he thinks, at least I used to be an adult. Mary grabs both of little Bruce's ankles and lifts to expose his bottom. Diaper rash cream is wiped on and baby powder sprinkled on too. Bruce is exactly like a 3-year-old toddler boy. He dreads what is happening as Mary uses diaper rash cream on his front diaper area. Baby powder is used next. Part 3, Mary tickles Bruce's belly, at least he is not crying anymore. Mary gets out a disposable Pampers diaper that is plain white with a plastic outside. No wait, just because I am little don't mean you put me back in diapers, Bruce spoke up. You are no longer potty trained, Mary said, you woke up in a wet bed. I want you in diapers as my toddler girl. Bruce's mind can't handle this situation. Is he a toddler or is he an adult? It is obvious by his size Bruce is a toddler, but he remembers being an adult. You will regress more as time goes by and forget all about formerly being an adult, Mary explains. Mary spreads out a diaper and slips it under Bruce's bottom. He fidgets a bit, but the diaper is easily pulled up between his legs and taped on snugly. Mary puts pink plastic panties on Bruce, who knows what is happening but can't stop it. Mary finds a pink onesie and dresses Bruce in that. She puts pink girl's lacy top socks on his feet. Bruce's long hair is brushed nicely and put in a ponytail in the back. Bruce looks like a toddler girl. Mary picks him up and shows him in a mirror. Look, you only weigh 35 pounds, Mary said, weighing Bruce. The change is permanent, honey. My adult brother is now my toddler girl in diapers. Bruce is picked up and carried to the kitchen. Mary fills a baby bottle full of warm formula. She has a seat on a rocking chair in the living room and bottle feeds Bruce. Mary knows Bruce needs a new name. I will call you Betsy, Mary said, like the Betsy Wetsy dolly. Bruce is slightly less than 3 feet tall after the full regression. As Betsy, he nurses down the baby bottle of formula. A playpen is in the living room. Betsy is placed in the playpen. She has a pink teddy bear and a small dolly to play with. Hello Sylvia, your regression formula worked just like you promised, Mary said on the phone. Of course it did, Dr. Sylvia Drake replied, I spent many hours on this and conducted many tests. My husband fooled around on me, he is my baby now. Dr. Drake injected her husband as a test subject. He is a toddler boy back in diapers now. The ladies chat about the amazing results of the serum. The call ends pleasantly after 15 minutes. Mary already stocked up on baby food and formula for Betsy. She will have to find a babysitter for Betsy when she returns to work on Monday. Mary fixes dinner and eats by herself in the kitchen. Looks like baby has wet her diaper, Mary said, Mommy will change you. Betsy is carried to the nursery and placed on the diaper table. She is undressed and the wet diaper is removed. The only thing that suggests Betsy is a male is her very small penis. Betsy is cleaned and prepped for a new diaper. Mary slips one under Betsy's bottom and tapes it on tight. The same plastic panties are put back on and the pink onesie snapped at the crotch. In time you will love being a toddler girl, Mary said. I have the cutest outfits any toddler girl can wear. Betsy is an adult trapped in a toddler's body. There is no changing what has occurred. Mary loves the change and is happy being a mommy. She takes Betsy and places her in the high chair. A bib that says baby girl is tied around her neck. Ms. just a baby, Betsy said. Ms. wants more food. Goo, goo, GAA, Ms. hungry. Mary spoon feeds Betsy stewed prunes, yellow squash, and banana pudding. A 35-pound toddler does not eat very much. A baby bottle of cold water is given to Betsy to drink. Mary makes the pink teddy bear dance on the food tray to be cute. Mary realizes that bedtime for Betsy will have to be 8 p.m. from now on. She will get Betsy up around 6 a.m. on weekdays and drop her off at a babysitter's house. Tomorrow is Sunday and some plans are made. Saturday night after some television cartoons it is 8 p.m. Betsy is carried to her nursery and diaper changed. She is dressed in a pink nightgown with pink plastic baby panties. Mommy is putting you to bed in your crib, Mary said, placing Betsy on the mattress. The side rail is raised, leaving no way for Betsy to get out on her own. Mommy Mary gives Betsy a baby bottle of warm formula to help her sleep. Bruce as Betsy is not understanding why he is not adult anymore. The light is dimmed, the door is left half open. Mary gives Betsy a kiss on the forehead. Sleep tight baby, Mary said, tomorrow is Sunday. The following morning Mary dresses Betsy real pretty for church after her diaper change. She has on a pink toddler girl's dress and rumba panties. Her hair is styled into a ponytail on each side of her head. Those are tied with pink ribbon making a bow. After church during the luncheon and get-together Betsy is the talk of the room. She is adorable, people would say. I want to change her diaper, some said. Mary is lucky and finds a nice girl 18 years old to babysit Betsy during the week. Okay, Sally, be at my place at 6 a.m. so I can get ready for work, Mary said, glad to have Sally coming over. Sally will get a big surprise changing Betsy's diaper.